Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝐬𝐿546 on WhatIf. Now let's start. It wasn't long after that meeting he had his first meeting with a UA teacher, although in hindsight that wasn't all that surprising. This had been the biggest job he had been given and from All Might's sidekick too, since he had started his information agency. Not to mention the first time he had visibly interfered. He couldn't help it though, one glimpse of Aries' desperate tear-filled eyes and he found he had no choice but to step in. That was the reason he had decided to do this job, in the end, to help people. No matter how annoying the consequences were. He barely restrained the sigh from escaping as he looked across from him to the 2 UA teachers across from him. He had better things to be doing, this wasn't even for an assignment, because then he could at least be getting paid for this headache. At least he didn't think it was, and since neither were too active since having joined you, dealing with a class full of teens was as good excuse as any, so the odds of it actually being a job were fairly low. And just like that, I knew what it was. Can you guess? Deku winced as Present Mike screamed across at him from the couch, arms waving wildly. You've told this story already, it's not even that good, Present. Now if you want to hear a decent story, Deku, Midnight cut in offering a predatory smile. I know a very good one, but you seem like you know quite a few yourself, care to share one? How did you decide on Deku? It does mean, can't do anything. Deku practiced his patient smile again. The thrill of meeting the 2 heroes near its end after they had spent the past few hours bickering with each other without ever stopping. He had barely gotten a word in. That's right, it's a bit of a nickname, a bit of a reminder, but that's enough of this. I'm expecting someone to visit soon. What brings you here today? He has things to do, no matter what they seem to think. Well, to be honest, now wasn't that just a blatant lie? We heard so much about you from 𝐬𝐿 that Nizu actually wanted to meet you himself to see about you partnering with UA, but you really are as young as he said you were. How old are you exactly? I'd put you a few years before freshman year, so last year of elementary. Aiming younger than he looked just slightly to try and provoke him into giving an exact age. Not bad. Yeah. You're a little one, aren't you? How long have you been doing this for? Are you planning to try for UA? A bit amateur, looking at the lease would give them a good guess, or at least a starting point. And a hero card could get you access to almost anything in this day and age. Deku didn't even bother addressing his age, although they had reminded him this would be the year he would have tried out for UA. Now there was a thought he didn't know what to do with. I haven't quite decided what to do myself. I have done fairly good for myself as it is though. I guess. The open skepticism in Present Mike's voice said enough about what they thought about their house, and to be fair the building really didn't look like much. But that was exactly the point. Midnight responded with the far more tactful comment of, this place. You could do so much better. Say, how about you drop by UA sometime this week? Nizu was busy today, but he really would like to meet you. An offer to visit you. Now that would be something his younger self would do almost anything for, and deep down he knew that had changed just about not at all. I'll consider, but I wouldn't want to bother him. Don't worry about it. Just ask for me or Midnight at the gate and we'll take you right to him. Thank you, I really must get going now though. We hear ya, see ya later kiddo. The 2 trooped out, leaving him alone in the front room of the building. Creak. The hidden door to the back room creaked loudly, protesting as it always did when you didn't open it correctly, and announcing his new guest's presence. Deku glances over at Eri, who was watching him with wide red eyes in glitter-coated clothes. His home would probably be worse off. Deku. Who were they? The yellow one was really loud. It's alright, Ri, they're gone now and he isn't he? Aha. Eri grinned as she ran over and bounced on the couch the duo had vacated. Deku glanced at the bug detector he kept in his pocket as a precaution. The area was clean. They were heroes. The really noisy yellow one was Present Mike. Have you heard of him? He smiled at her as she paused to think, pouting cutely. Nope. Is he really famous? Deku got up, folding his chair and returning it to the wall before offering his hand to her. Really, I guess I'll just have to introduce you to all the heroes myself then, okay? Okay. Eri tugged on his hand, happily swinging their arms as they headed to the hidden back room, the clean, brightly decorated living room and kitchen of his small home. The next time Present Mike visited, it was to Eri sitting in an office chair happily swinging her feet and humming as she doodled. Hello, little rocker. What are you getting up to? You're Present Mike, Eri declared victoriously while ignoring his question. Guilty. Is Deku in today? Nope. He's busy. She returned to her crayon drawings. Alrighty then. Know when he'll be back? Soon I think, he said to warn whoever came in. I'm armed and able to defend myself though. I even have an easy quirk cheat sheet. Are you really afraid of bugs though? Present Mike flinched, glancing around nervously as if there were bugs laying in wait for him to drop his guard, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Although that isn't exactly common knowledge, did Deku tell you? Eri nodded happily. He said you might drop by. Oh. Are you his little sister then? I wouldn't have guessed it. His sister. Eri paused. Present Mike moved closer in concern, his voice lowered, for him anyway. Hey, little listener. Eri quickly recovered and returned to her art. I guess. You had me there for a second. Where are your two parents then? Is it just the two of you kiddos fending for yourselves? Everything all right? Oh, hello Mr. Present Mike, I thought you might drop by. I'm sorry I couldn't visit last week. Things were unexpectedly busy. Things really had been busy with the introduction of Eri to his schedule and being visited by 3 different heroes for some information. He had to update a few files too, and was still trying to figure out how to house Eri in his 1-bedroom, 1-living-room home. She had a bed in his room at the moment, even though she mostly ended up sleeping by him because of nightmares, as well as toys and her own chest of drawers. It made his room clash horribly with one side favoring green and red while the other was red, blue, and yellow, but in the end it made Eri happy, so he would be that last to say anything about it, even as the Christmas-wide colors spread through the living area and throughout the rest of the building too. Present Mike spun about to face the entrance where Deku now stood, bags of groceries in one hand and a few thick files in the other. It's a-okay, little man. I get it. All the same, if you ever do wish to visit, the invitation stands. Anytime you want to drop by, just ask for me at the gate. You can even bring your little sis with ya. The whole statement was accompanied by the now expected exaggerated hand movements. Thank you, I listened to your show last night. Deku grinned at Eri, giving her a pat on the head as he passed by, setting the bags on the floor and the files on the desk by an empty crayon box. Really? Well, what did you think? It was definitely an interesting stance for a media man to take about the media. That's 'cause you're looking at it the wrong way, little dude. I suppose you have a view from the other side as a pro-hero 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. Deku startled from his mumbling at the loud interruption, before tilting his head in curiosity. Hey, be nice to him. Eri demands, looking up again to glare threateningly at Present Mike. I'll keep that in mind, little rocker. My bad. Pouting, she kept her eyes on them as she pulled out another crayon. What is it then, Deku leaned back to rest against the wall as he quietly rambled to himself. This time Present Mike let him, watching with mild interest as they thought through it a few seconds. It's because you're not a reporter or writer, you run an opinion-based talk show. You don't even seek people out to be guest stars for it. The ones you've had so far are mostly heroes you've met who you know well, or those who approached you, meaning dash, ding ding ding. You got it, little listener. Well done. Deku beamed before his face reddened and he began stuttering out denials, thanks and some vague mix of words that didn't quite fit anywhere. Aha. Eri glared weakly at him. Hey, be nice. Ahaha, sorry, I'll behave, promise, little one. Well, I got to get going, catch you later, little listeners. I got to save the hero course from expulsion. He really is too HRD on those students. I look forward to your visit. Present Mike walked out with a wave over his shoulder. Well then, Izuku checked the room for bugs again. It was clear, but you could never be too careful. How would you feel about a trip to 𝐬𝐮𝐻? Really? The small girl's eyes lit up at the prospect, her bright red eyes gleaming. Izuku smiled back just as happy, both at the opportunity and seeing her smile so happily. Really, really. Yay. Cheering, she shot up, abandoning her artwork to rush to the back room, already mumbling excitedly about the trip. It seemed like she was starting to pick up his bad habits already. Maybe getting out some would be good for her. Glancing down to pick up the grocery bags, he spotted the drawing she had made, and his smile grew even more as he looked down at the crude stock figures drawn on it. A tall green one with wild hair, looking almost like rabbit ears with how some strands stood up, and slightly lighter green eyes, standing with a grin beside the second figure with pale blue hair and red eyes. Grinning like an idiot, and ignoring the tears now running down his face, he picked it up to take back with him. This was a total going on the fridge picture. Hey Izuku. Aries mumbled, sounding impossibly vulnerable as she buried her face into his t-shirt. It was yet another bad night as she woke up from nightmares, going to Izuku for comfort. What's up, Aries? He continued, stroking her hair soothingly, humming an old lullaby. Are we family? Of course, if you want to be. Really? She was staring up at him now with those kicked puppy dog red eyes of her that just made him want to hide her away from all the evil and unfairness of the world. Really, really? Pinky promise, he offered his right pinky finger to her. You can't break one of those. Deal. Brother Izuku. She linked their pinky fingers together with a triumphant smile. That means you won't ever leave me, right? Like in that movie. Of course. He hugged her tightly to him even as he continued stroking her hair. I'll never leave you behind, not even if you get really super annoying and try to take over the world. Okay. Izuku smiled as she dropped off to sleep in what seemed like seconds as he restarted the lullaby. It didn't matter what happened, he would never let anyone harm her, be it villains, heroes, or something else. He would crush them. Quirk or no quirk. After all, they were family now, and families stuck together. The days passed quickly, but this time Izuku kept an eye on the time, and after 3 days he decided it was as good a time as any and set about locking up the building. A surprisingly difficult task, or not surprising considering what it stored. He headed to the back room to tell 𝐬𝐮𝐻. When he found her, she was standing staring up at the fridge and her drawing. How do you feel about visiting UA today? She startled but grinned at him. Really? Let's go, this will be so fun. She grabbed her red messenger bag from the hook, stuffing in a rainbow of art supplies and her new sketchbook to join the mess of stuff she kept there. All set then? She nodded. Not forgetting anything at all then? No, don't think so. Not even outside clothes. She glances down at her light green pajamas before rushing off to grab her clothes, slamming the bathroom door behind her. Meanie. Izuku couldn't help the smile on his face as he gathered his stuff as well, grabbing 𝐬𝐮𝐻's brightly colored, plastic watch and the hairbrush she had inevitably forgotten on the table again. Ready. The door banged again as 𝐬𝐮𝐻 rushed out dressed for the day in leggings and a blue jumper with a light pink collared shirt underneath. We can go now, right Izuku? Izuku waved the brush back and forth in the air. Not quite, you forgot to brush your hair again, didn't you? Can you do it? 𝐬𝐮𝐻 have her best puppy dog eyes. It always hurts when I try. Of course, Izuku pulled out a chair for her. You just need more patience and practice so you don't tug the snags so hard. Here. 𝐬𝐮𝐻 victoriously handed him a hairband as he gently pulled the brush through her pale, powder blue hair. Pulling back the front strands, he tied them back so they formed a small ponytail amongst the rest that he kept down, keeping the hair from easily falling into her face. Carefully he set a sparkly flower pin beside her single horn and handed her the watch so she could put it on. All set, now can we go, right? Deku chuckled. Yes, we're all ready now. The journey to the train station wasn't too far and they made it to UA in time for school to get out, the students pouring through the gates in a rush to head home or to whatever activities they had planned. Carefully, Izuku selected a nearby cafe for them so that they could wait for the crowd to lessen, both enjoying their sweets as 𝐬𝐮𝐻 asked about the pedestrians' lives. Deku made a point to deliberate long enough they wouldn't hear his guesses if they were nearby. That would make for an awkward conversation. Thank you. Have a nice day. Once the rush ended, they paid and left, heading to the gates and pressing the visitor button, which garnered them more than a few looks. Deku readjusted his hood self-consciously to cover his face and the half-mask on it better. It was lucky that it was getting cold out, or they would definitely look suspicious, as both of them wore jackets with the hoods pulled on. Beside him, Eri chattered on excitedly between bites of her pastry. "Hello." On the other side of the gate stood an intimidating man dressed in all black, beside the bandages wrapped loosely like a scarf around his neck. "Oh. Hello, I'm here to see your Eraserhead." Eri looked triumphant to recognize him. Giving the duo a second glance, and Eri a calculating look, he nodded. "Yep, not many people know that though, because you're a spy, right? Underground hero." Deku corrected absently, having gathered his thoughts. "We're here to see President Mike. He's expecting us, well, sort of." "Fine name." "Oh, right. Deku, he'll know me as Deku." He was gifted with an utterly unimpressed look. "Deku? Why yes. Come on, I'll take you to him." Eraserhead turned, leaving them to follow him. "Don't fall behind." Undeterred, Eri grabbed Deku's hand and trotted after him to catch up, and pulling Deku with her, to skip beside the hero. "Your quirk is erasure, right? That's super cool. Do you know Mr. Mix? He's super tall and he's blonde and wears dark clothes like you do. You're nicer than him though." Eraserhead twitched. "You know him, right? I've only seen him twice in person, but we talked for a while once." When she got no response, she continued anyway. "Did you know he's afraid of bugs? Because he is." Deku tried to interrupt before she said too much. It would seem Eri took a liking to him. "Oh, that's right, you've known him since high school. He picked your name, right? Don't mommies normally pick people's names for them? But Brother Zoo picked mine." Deku internally winced. Eraserhead was curious now. "You know, Mr. President Mike didn't really seem very cool. I thought heroes had to be, you know." Eraserhead twitched again. Deku was becoming convinced he was trying to keep from laughing at her commentary. That would, however, mean. Now that would be an interesting turn of events. His information might need updating again. "Oh. That's cold, little listener." President Mix's voice interrupted his thoughts as a classroom door further down the hall opened up and he stepped out. Eraserhead turned to go. "We're here by, don't be that way, 𝐀𝐮𝐿. Stay a while. The little rocker's already taken a liking to you. I'm sure Deku won't mind." The two heroes exchanged significant looks that had Deku narrowing his eyes. "I'm Aizawa 𝐀𝐮𝐿, and he's Yamada Hisashi, since I doubt that idiot bothered to introduce himself properly." A good plan, trying to force him into a complete introduction, get his name. "Hey Dash. Not cool, man." "A nice attempt. Deku, this is my little sister." Eri seemed to sparkle at that. Nice to meet you." They'd agreed that she would go by long before this meeting, as it was similar enough to her original name, so she didn't have to unlearn and then relearn her name, but no one would automatically draw conclusions like they would if she kept her old one and they knew anything about her life before. He'd already ensured there weren't many pictures, and none that were easy to find. Besides, it allowed him to keep his nickname for her. No family name. Might as well if they were being persistent. If anything, it may keep them from digging too far into his own past. Forgive me, I'm not used to casual introduction. Most of those I work with except just Deku. It's Kobayashi. Kobayashi Deku. A fairly common last name, but not too common to be overly suspicious. Okay then. Nizu isn't doing much at the moment if you'd like to visit him now. Very well, lead the way then. If you're here to visit Nizu, it's likely going to be long and a bit boring for your sister. I'm sure Midnight wouldn't mind watching her for you. A clever idea, seeing if Midnight could get some information from Eri, while he wasn't there to moderate what she said. They'd already seen she was more likely to talk about their lives, and the heroes clearly already had their suspicions. No. But they underestimated how attached was to him. "I'm staying with brother." Izuku beamed, scooping her up into his arms as her grip on his hand tightened. "Alrighty then, off we go." "Alright. Follow me, little listeners." All along the way, President Mike kept up a running commentary with Eraserhead, occasionally interjecting grumpily to correct him as they explained it, when he decided the story was getting too far from the truth. Air watched the two of them with wide eyes, only interrupting to ask questions a few times, which present Mike gleefully answered. The group came to a stop in front of a door clearly marked, Principal Nizu, alrighty. Let's see if he's in here. You don't knock dash. Deku was cut off as present Mike yanked the door open, completely foregoing knocking, sticking his head in. Hello. You in there? He shut the door. Nope, let's keep going. You can't just open others' doors like that. Air huffed. It's rude. It's okay, little listener. The principal's cool with it, but definitely get permission first. The group moved on this time with Air bickering with present Mike, but she seemed happier again as she squirmed to be put down and walk in the front with the blonde pro-hero. She's not actually your sister, is she? Deku glances over at Eraserhead. They had fallen back somewhat. It spoke wonders of how comfortable Air was around the two heroes that she had let go of his hand already. She is, but we're not BLD related if that's what you're asking. He grinned wryly. What gave it away? It couldn't possibly be the looks, could it? It had taken longer than he'd like to admit to adjust to sarcasm, but with the less than savory company he often found himself keeping he had learned quickly enough. How you both act mostly, actually, but I suppose I can understand the sentiment. Oh. Don't try that with me, it won't work, kid. You're right, Deku sighed in fake disappointment before brightening. I suppose I'll just have to ask Mr. Present Mike then, won't I? It doesn't matter how good you are if your company will talk without even a question. They both knew, present Mike used his talkative front very effectively to hide secrets, always talking about something, sure, but of how much importance that talk held, that was debatable. Like you can talk. Deku gave his best mysterious smile. You'd be surprised, brother. Brother. Hurry up, we're going to see if Mr. Nizu is in the support area. Come on, we'll get to see it and everything. He was starting to get the suspicion they were just getting a tour, not actually looking for the principal. All right, I'm coming. With a final smile aimed at Eraserhead, Deku jogged over to catch up with the two up front, seamlessly joining their conversation about the UA quirk equipment and support course and their items. Something he knew far too much about already to not have insider knowledge. Eraserhead narrowed his eyes before closing them, deactivating his ability. They hadn't been using their quirk at that moment, so that was all prior knowledge. They hadn't even tried to activate theirs to gain more knowledge, or they would have noticed what he was doing. How interesting, it would definitely help narrow down their quirk's abilities. The group of four made their way through the halls to the support rooms. He wasn't there, and then the teacher lounge, empty, before finally stopping by the general ed class. They weren't there either. Never fear, little listeners. I'm sure dash. You have no clue where they are, do you? Eraserhead interrupted. 𝐬𝐬𝐴𝐶𝐶, right? Eraserhead sighed. And you didn't think to call. Where is your sense of adventure? Besides, not everyone is so disillusioned with UA. I'm sure our guests enjoyed the tour. So that was the reason. Deku knew some of the places seemed weird, like the lunchroom, some quirk training rooms, and 3 different classrooms. It had proved his point though, being surprisingly subtle for someone who spent his time screaming his every thought to the world, but that's probably what made his subtleties so hard to catch. Hi. Well, it's pretty late now, and I'm sure Air wants to be getting home for dinner soon. I'm sure I can meet Nizu some other time. All right, Tridey. Catch you next time, kiddos. I'll see you to the gate, Eraserhead sighed. Air smiled through a yawn. Bye-bye, see you next time. We'll look forward for your next visit. Or maybe we'll visit you guys first. Who knows? Deku patted Air's head again as he picked her up. Thank you for the tour, Mr. Present Mike, Mr. Eraserhead. No need to be so formal, but sure thing. With a final nod to present Mike, Deku followed Eraserhead towards the gate. The walk to the gate took no time at all, and he had to wonder if Present Mike had planned that too. He really was too clever when he tried to be, and after nodding goodbye to Eraserhead, the duo began making their way to the train station to head home. The sun already having mostly set, the two were left in the odd mix of sunlight and the artificial light of the streetlights shining down on the walkway. After the brief train ride, the two began the final leg of their journey, Deku absently muttering about the pros and cons of picking up takeout for dinner, and Eri smiling sleepily on his shoulder, clutching her bag that now hung across his chest after she insisted he hold it so she could try the obstacle course 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴𝐻 had created for her when they stopped by one of the training rooms. It was good she had had so much fun today. She had missed out on so much of life from her time with the precepts, and as much as he could try, being an information broker did not allow for much free time or normality. But he could manage it, if only to see her smile at him one more time. He had become what he was now to help people, but now he found himself willing to face the world again with nothing at his back and no hope for the future, alone if need be, as long as it would keep 𝐬𝐻 happy. His little sister. His family. It had been a while since he could say those words to anyone, since someone had given him their full support. Since someone had believed in him. Because as much as she had tried to be there for him, she couldn't, not after that day, when he had had his dreams crushed and all he needed was someone to have some faith in him. Anyone. And instead of reassuring him, telling him he could do it, she had apologized and broke down on him. As if she was the one whose dreams had been dashed before their very eyes. But they were a distant memory now, and he had 𝐬𝐻 by his side. So he would do what he could to protect 𝐬𝐻 and make her smile. She believed in him, so he would never let her down. His eyes watered, but he didn't cry, the smile fixed on his face and thoughts of takeout long gone as he glanced down at 𝐬𝐻. He had a family again, and things were looking up. For both of them. Heavy footsteps thudded out in front of him as a figure looked out from the shadows of the walkway. The rat finally decided to exit its little hole then. The rough masculine voice sneered, causing Deku's head to jerk up in shock. "Oh hello. 𝐀𝐮𝐿. Oh hello. 𝐀𝐮𝐿." Deku couldn't help the nervous glance he sent 𝐬𝐻, who had unconsciously tensed at the newcomer's threatening tone. "What brings you here? I thought I made it clear I had no interest in your proposal. And I think now that you're trapped out in the open you should reconsider, that is, before I make you." I must say, 𝐀𝐮𝐿, he made a point to use his family name instead of his hero name, a not exactly secret rebellion he made to spite the other when there was not much he could actually do against the man. Being the number 2 hero did have its advantages, but in the week he had known the hero he had already begun making plans. There was not much he could actually do now. Without too incriminating proof, because there was proof, it was just a question of how easily he could brush off the allegations. But the internet was a wonderful invention, and one he, more than most, knew how to use. It would just take a bit of time. But he had become who he was to help others. That definitely is a tempting offer, but threats don't work well with me. I mean, if I take threats from heroes, what will keep villains from copying? Heroes are the ones with morals. Well, I mean, they're the ones who are supposed to have morals. He absently trailer off, are not doing too great on that front. Mentally, Deku went through his instant blackmail checklist. The 4 voice recorders on his person and 3 with 𝐬𝐻, and the 3 cameras he had hidden on his own person as well. Those 3 recorded video but also took timed photographs to be sent, encrypted, to his computer and phone in case they were damaged. You better watch what you say, rat. 𝐬𝐻, well yes, while we're on that topic, I feel obligated to say this conversation is being recorded and who knows what can happen with recordings, they could end up anywhere. He paused to watch the other's flame-covered face darken. Now I really must ask you leave me and my younger sister alone. I fear she's been kept up too long and she's had a long day. My answer won't change. I don't approve of your goals and strongly disagree with some of your actions as a person, so I will not work with you. You think you can just threaten me and walk away with it? I threaten no one, it's only polite to warn people when they're being recorded, that is all. I only intended to be mannerly. But with your attitude it's not completely a surprise you missed it. You are the one who threatened me with the whole or I'll make you business, that is, I am an innocent civilian simply returning home with their sister. What threats exactly can I make? Endeavor growled, drawing themselves up. How adorable. Those extra few inches of height did nothing to make you look more intimidating when you already doubled someone's height. Innocent. That's rich, I know what you are. I have broken no laws, not so much as a traffic ticket on my record. I am an innocent private citizen, nothing more. Oh. And we're just ignoring your little side job. I am very open in my occupation, Mr. 𝐀𝐮𝐿. I offer support and advisement for heroes. An admirable job by anyone's opinion. Just because I refuse you service because I disapprove of you both as a person and a hero, does not make my job a secret or illegal. 𝐿𝐴𝐻 flushed. What exactly is that supposed to mean? You're a horrible hero, offering no support or even protection to those you are supposed to save, too focused on reducing to ash anything you perceive as getting in your way to the #1 spot. It's shame you don't recognize it's partially your attitude. But you make for a worse husband and father, driving your wife to insanity and viewing your children only as tools to build your legacy at the top. This is all I have seen from you. Can you blame me for not wanting anything to do with you? 𝐿𝐴𝐻 growled, advancing and swinging at him, flames leaping from his hand as Deku dodged the fist to spread out, fanning around the surrounding area. Deku twisted to keep Eri from the flames, sliding behind 𝐿𝐴𝐻 and backing a few paces when a kick to the back of the knees only elicited more flames. That attack was completely unprovoked. What is wrong with you? 𝐬, 𝐴𝐻 muttered, stirring in his arms from the sudden movement, heat, and noise. It startled both as their attention shifted. Izuku's eyes widened in time to 𝐿𝐴𝐻's growing smile, a sad, cruel thing. He raised his hand, flames liking at the arm as Deku jumped back a few more paces. No, please not, Ri. Please. Several things happened at once in a single breath of a moment. 𝐿𝐴𝐻 sent out a new wave of flames aimed at both the area around Izuku and 𝐴𝐻's sleeping form. Izuku flicked out a baton even as he turned to shield 𝐴𝐻 with his already burned back. The side opposite Eri was already far worse off though. The baton made contact with its target with a loud clang. As if the no echoed through the air, and then the flow of flames cut off as suddenly as they started with it. In the next moment 𝐿𝐴𝐻 was turning with a roar of frustration towards the newcomer to see Eraserhead, eyes wide and staring straight at him, capture cloth at the ready, while a wave of water shot from the fire hydrant in a concentrated stream, the cap laying useless, knocked off by Deku's baton. Eri, woken in the commotion, gasped softly as Izuku pushed her behind the hydrant as he curled into himself, a fire rushing through his nervous system separate from the flames that still liked his body. In the haze of sleep and confusion from the chaos that now surrounded her, a far cry from the calm calculation that followed Izuku's usual actions, Eri, without realizing it, activated her quirk on the cement beneath them, liquefying before it was reduced to an assortment of fine powders, raising cries of shock from the two combatants and a muffled scream as the smooth cement gave under Izuku's curled-up form, entering some wounds and agitating the mess even further. Never mind the medical issues that the chemicals and bacteria could cause later on, before a powdery dust joined it, further contaminating his wounds. Eri, it's okay, breathe. A far calmer version of Deku than the one on the other side of the hydrant sounded from under her jacket. With fumbling fingers she tugged out the sealed pendant the voice had come from, a gift from Deku set to activate whenever her heart rate got too high and her quirk activated. Just focus on my voice, alright? Breathe in and out. Count with me. 1 6 17 3 out 2 9 4 12 in 131 2 out 7 5 0 18 inches. Everything is going to be okay, you hear me, Ri? Everything is alright, I am here for you. 𝐴𝐻 felt her quirk settle back beneath her skin. It would be alright, her brother was here, and he promised to keep her safe. Izuku was here. It was alright. The water continued to shoot out, spraying up dust and flooding the area with chemical-filled muck. But 𝐴𝐻 continued to lean against the hydrant, clutching her necklace, and on the other side, Izuku lay curled in agony, listening to her calming breaths, breathing with her, and just a few feet away two heroes fought. One doused bone deep in the frigid water, their fire abilities kept at bay by the second's burning glare, as the other one dodged the first's still powerful fists, waiting for an opening to tie them up. Hatred burned brighter than the first's strongest flames in their red-orange eyes. This was not something that could easily be covered up, even if it was for the night. You would attack an innocent civilian. You don't know what that boy has done. Get out of my way, Eraserhead. He has done nothing to justify this. I know that. He's a kid. He's protecting villains. Somehow that doesn't seem like the whole story. In fact, the second landed a punishing blow. 𝐼 tells an entirely different story, and so does every other hero who has worked with him, bar one, who was jailed not even a year later, and who he wouldn't work with. But sure, let's hear these heinous crimes that entitle you to attack a preteen and their kid sister. Move, Eraserhead. Do not think I will hesitate. You will need to blink soon. The next fist was aimed straight at his face. Mr. Eraserhead, blink now. The stream of water sprayed sideways, redirected so it returned to spray right into the number 2 hero's face. The gathering flames spluttered out again as the mammoth figure stumbled back at the assault, the stream following him. The grin that graced the underground hero's face could only be described as demonic. Thanks, kid. The capture cloth shot out, trapping the other hero and with a loop pulling the man into the range of the hydrant without the water needing to brutalize Deku's hands in order to redirect it. The underground hero secured him even as he pulled a phone from his pocket and dialed for the cops and an ambulance, running a concerned eye running over the duo. You look like hell. Ha. Feel it too. How is Eri? You really are family. You hear that? Sound off if you're alive over there. Oh, I'm fine. I'm alive. Any injuries? A frustrated pause. Do you hurt anywhere? Anything feel weird? And no, I'm good, I'm alright. Fine, I'm alive. Alright, you're clearly not fine. Can you stay there for a moment though? Yes, I can. Good dash. Look at you, going soft over them. I always thought you were more like a 𝐬𝐿. Endeavor's sneer was cut off as a foot was planted firmly in his face. What was that about going soft? Never before had sirens sounded so welcome to Izuku, and that was no easy feat considering his last year as Izuku Midoriya. He drifted off in a haze of pain to the constant thrum of the throbbing sensation all over and the sirens. Distantly he heard someone shouting, but nothing registered in his hazy mind. Deku. Hey Deku. Kid, stay with me kid. Come on, your sister needs you. Pull it together. Deku, come on Kobayashi. It was oddly peaceful. As a scream entered the melody preceded by a quiet muttering. The voice was so familiar, even as it was joined by his own quietly soothing, although he knew he wasn't speaking. That's right, he had to hang on. He had a family, and they believed in him. He'd hold on for them. He'd hold on for Eri. Don't worry Ri, I'm here, it's okay. His hand reached out patting something. It was the thought that mattered, right? Or was that something else? He couldn't think. Couldn't focus. That wasn't good. He needs to be able to do that or else people would notice. People would find out. That could be bad. Why would it be bad again? It's okay little sheepling, I'm not going anywhere. The scream had faded to sobs and his voice was gone now too, so he caught their wet chuckle amidst the sobs. That was better. He'd made them laugh. Remember to smile. Okay my little sheep, why? I'm not going anywhere. Okay. Their voice was quiet but they were no longer crying. Deku managed a smile before fading into the abyss that welcomed him with open arms. He almost wanted to laugh. That was new. Since when did something welcome him so willingly? Since when, a dark voice whispered to him, did he not fight? Did he lie? Since when did abandoning Eri ever become an option? Never. Even if he was stuck returning as a ghost, he would be there for her. He pushed the fuzzy blackness that surrounded him away, and wasn't that just ironic, and awoke. Beep, beep, beep. He was greeted with a white wall and a comforting warmth pressed against his front, which, thankfully, remained unburned. Beep. Smiling, he reached over to run his fingers through her pale off-white blue hair. Beep. He sighed in contentment, pain medication making his whole perception of the world fuzzy. Beep. Either way, he needed to get someone's attention. Now was the time to act, with the Endeavor incident no doubt recently going public depending on how long he'd been out. Beep. And he needed to strike while the iron was hot. He could only hope the window of opportunity hadn't passed, or else he would have to wait even longer and use someone else to head the anti-Endeavor campaign, keeping to the shadows himself. Beep. One of their reputations weren't going to come out clean. This wasn't his first rodeo, and while he didn't have much to lose, unlike Endeavor, it would definitely set him back, and that fact alone would make the other desperate and more unpredictable. Beep. With that firmly in mind, Deku reached up and with his good hand and shakily yanked on the cords connecting him to the heart monitor. Beep. Silence fell. It didn't even take 2 seconds before the door went flying off its hinges as it slammed into the wall. There stood Eraserhead, his eyes wide and awake for what was probably the first time in a long while as he charged in the room. Jesus Christ, where is the nurse? Someone get a go. Hello, Mystery Racerhead, I suppose dash. He was cut off by a familiar blonde charging in as well. Izuku, what's going on? His voice was oddly quiet for him, almost an outside-speaking voice. A herd of nurses moved to push their way in only for them to stop when they saw their patient perfectly safe. They left to give the group some space. He would undoubtedly get a lecture later. Christ, kid. The underground hero sank against the wall with a sigh. Hello, Mr. Present Mike. Nice to see you again. Now, like I was saying, I guess I owe you a thank you for the save, Mystery Racerhead. Do either of you mind telling me how long I've been under? It's 12 o'clock, you've been out for 18 hours. You should be in a coma. I've found I'm surprisingly hard to kill, but that's not important at the moment dash. Not import dash. I need some things I need you to do for me. This is it. Shoot, this will be it. It's an opportunity one can't pass up. Where are my things? I'm going to need my phone at a bare minimum, but hopefully my mask, jacket, left shoe, you know what. Just bring me everything. Here's my watch, and my bag is right here too. They wouldn't listen to me when I said you would want your things right away. Deku turned to see Eri awake staring up at him with her trusting red eyes. I knew you would wake soon, you wouldn't leave me behind. Of course not, I'd stay even if only to haunt you, Ri. Now that you're awake though, did you get yourself checked over by a doctor? I didn't want you to worry while you were sleeping, I made sure the doctor told you. Didn't you hear them earlier? I'm sorry, I don't remember much from while I was sleeping. I'm sure it helped keep me from worrying though. Air grinned happily. You did well, he gave her a few soft pats on the head. Now then, have you eaten lunch yet? Her expression quickly changed to guilty then. I wanted to eat with you. Did you at least have breakfast? She ate a few bites of a bagel with salmon and cream cheese, hardly breakfast. Eraserhead gestured to the not even half-eaten food on the side table. He had stayed behind while Present Mike went off to get his stuff, so he now sat slumped in one of the two stiff chairs that lined the walls. Both recently retuned to their spot, according to Deku's sharp, even while drugged, eyes. Tattletale, Eri murmured through her new bite of the food. Brat. Present Mike re-entered to see the information gatherer sitting peacefully on the bed, one hand gently untangling the hair of the small single-horned girl that lay on the bed curled against him, asleep once again. They would pause only occasionally to use their good hand to mess with the three objects that lay in front of him. A shoe, a clip, and a watch. A single wireless earbud was stuck in his ear on his good side. Off to the side his longtime friend sat watching all now three of them with the barest hints of a smile on his face, looking relaxed despite the circumstances. His black hair hung in disarray, but he had at least managed to change from the destroyed clothes he was wearing from last night. It was a peaceful scene and one he'd have been content to leave interrupted for much longer if keen green eyes had not locked onto his, interrupting the calm with just a few words. Right, I'm going to need you to break me out of here. I've been here too long already. The kid had to be actively trying to cut years off from his lifespan. It took no time at all after he had access to a computer for him to be leading other users in an open revolt against Endeavor or just crying for full disclosure on what led to his arrest. Once he had made himself a virtual base, taking various degrees and even playing neutral or doubtful to more discreetly turn people, he began anonymously leaking video and vocal with various excuses. From there he would mold the members from two separate angles. His first step was complete. Then came phase 2. Now that he had turned the hearts of the internet, all he had to do is have several concerned citizens come forward about the famed hero's temperament of his children and suspicions about his wife. He of course had already discreetly lined up a few actual witnesses or put them in a position where they would be compelled to come forward, but he'd add a few more to the mix. Once more giving evidence and examples to the rumors. Of course, the delicate thing for this part was keeping the heroes on his side. To do this he would need to keep a firm not all heroes, just Endeavor stance. It would involve him putting emphasis on heroes' rights, but making clear that heroes should not be allowed to get away with villainy of the worst kind just because they were famous. Endeavor should not be allowed to attack the defenseless or terrorize their family. It was approaching dinner time when the doctor finally paid him a visit. They glanced in the room, giving him a disapproving frown the moment they saw him. You just had a life or death experience, I can't understand how your generation can stay so fixated on those machines. You most definitely shouldn't be up yet, much less playing on that, it will strain your eyes, and that position is horrible for you wounds. Yes, well, they stopped me from escaping, so this was the lesser evil. Besides, this is just preventative measures, if you really think about it. Just as important as healing, really. Deku absently muttered. He didn't even look up, continuing to speedily type far faster than most people could dream to, even with only one hand at his disposal due to his burns. Is there any way I can be taken off this pain medication? Or have the dose lessened? I can't think properly with all the fog in my head. You want to be taken off the pain medications? Young man, I know they don't hurt that much now, but you have third-degree burns. Oh. Deku's head snapped up as he actively realized someone new had arrived for the first time. Sorry, I just meant, sorry, I didn't realize you were there. Is it possible to take me off at least a little of this medicine though? I know what it feels like, really. It has happened before to a lesser extent, but I really need to focus now. Very important. Well, while on the topic of important things, we were unable to get in contact with your legal guardian. Your younger sister has been helping us out. She even showed us where you carried all medical records you might need on you. I think I should ask why you need to do that. You understand how this all looks to us, don't you? Especially since your sister wouldn't let us read it. She read it to us. Izuku couldn't help the proud smile he sent Eri, his little sister. She had learned so well. Although it was somewhat funny how she protected all but the information they needed. She'd make a great info broker someday if she wanted to be one. And it wasn't like he hadn't properly edited out any dangerous information on his files. I'm sorry, my phone is broken and I can't seem to remember their number off the top of my head with all this fuzz. Deku chose to respond to the only non-question in the storm before diverting back to his goal. What is today's date? What? No, I don't have a concussion. Most strong pain meds just make it hard for me to think. He turned his head in unison with the doctor. Eraserhead had activated his quirk. It deactivated and he returned his attention to his stare down with the doctor. The doctor continued but seemed shaken. What is the date? You weren't his doctor before, were you? This time it was Eraserhead who spoke, eyeing him unsurely although his quirk wasn't active yet. Yes. Well, that was the late night shift. I'm his doctor for now. Why don't you have a seat? Don't do that. Both of their heads swiveled to him, but Deku had returned to typing away. It was a nice attempt really, but come on, Katsuo, you didn't really think that disguise would work on me. Your hair is showing. I said I wouldn't really care if you tried that with me occasionally, but I do have to draw the line when you try it with my guests. The apparently not doctor, Katsuo, gave a put-upon sigh. Guess. Ah, come on Deku, you're in a hospital room. That can't really count, can it? Nice try. You're getting better, but I know so it won't bug me too much. That's where you're slipping up. Now while you're posing as my doctor, can you lower my dosage? I'm busy. You got it, boss. Katsuo laughed as he bounced over to the drip. Wait a second, Eraserhead's capture tap shot out, catching his hand. Does he even know how to properly do that? You can't just be messing with those things. Katsuo grinned over at him, running his free hand through his almost shoulder-length hair, a dyed brown from the tips to around his ears where it faded to his natural coloring blue. Scary. But don't worry, I'm qualified. All right then. They relented and the capture tape settled once more. Where do you find these people? Deku shrugged, grinning at him. The man dissolved into quiet laughter again. You are the worst. I know. You tell me. Katsuo turned back to where Eraserhead sat, present Mike sleeping by his side. I was a bit worried of people going after him while he was like this, but I see I shouldn't have worried. I'm Ito Katsuo, Deku here's friend. Who are you? Shoda Aizawa. Eraserhead's eyes widened as he finished speaking, even as he tried to stop upon realizing that something was wrong. Deku sighed. He does that a lot. Don't worry, Katsuo. Be nice. When am I ever? Deku and Eraserhead spoke over each other calmly. Surprisingly often for all the talk you give. I don't know. Well, that was a demonstration of his quirk. Don't tell him that. Katsuo pouted. Eraserhead interrupted them before they could start. What are you talking about? Fine, Katsuo sighed. My quirk is called Remix, although it's never been officially named, I just call it that. If someone answers my question or follows a suggestion I made as a question, they have to answer or do whatever question I pose next. But the harder they struggle against it, the more questions I can ask before it ends. I would realize if I was forced to answer a question, well, that's the thing, after it ends they completely forget they were ever under my control. All actions or things they did, they'll think they did of their own motivations. That's a very useful quirk, yeah, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 laughed. And can you believe I used to only use it to make people embarrass themselves in bars before I met this guy? Eraserhead activated his quirk, glaring at him. Sorry, it's a habit. Old habits die hard, you know. All right then, it's a good thing you decided to stop by though. You still have 𝐿𝐿's number, right? Give him a call, will you? I might need a bit of his help soon. Oh, already? Yes. Deku blinked a few times, clearing his head. Shoot, they've noticed Todoroki has a good lawyer. I'm almost jealous. Let me see. Sure, you're kidding, right? That's the oldest trick? And it's lasted because it works. Yeah, I'll give Tanaka a call now. You go to your nerdy stuff, boss. Wait, your friend's called Tanaka-jin. Eraserhead seemed incredulous as the name registered. And Jin Tanaka is a common placeholder name for things like credit card ads or shady people checking into hotels. Similar to John Smith or Jane Doe. I know, he named himself kinda early, and he always was a bit naive and straight-laced. Good old Tanaka. He was in too deep when he realized it. You mean he was told? Wait, you had to tell him? You met him when he was like 22, are you telling me? Yep, but not quite on the age. Oh shoot, sorry about that. Mind shaking my hand? Don't worry about it. I'm half surprised you didn't take the opportunity for the thing. Izuku grinned happily up at him as he emphasized what no doubt was some sort of inside joke for them. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 froze, staring at him. You did that on purpose, didn't you? I'm not all that worried about what you'll make me do, so yes. Does that mean every time I've got you was? All but two was on purpose. Deku grinned once he was free yet again. It's interesting being under it. Besides, I'm confident there's more to your quirk and it's bugging me. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 broke into laughter. You take quirk analysis too far, boss. One day that quirk fascination of yours is so going to get you. It already has, but I think we both know I can take care of myself. You know it, boss, I'll be back. He flipped out his phone, dialing as he left. What are you planning? Eraserhead was watching him with a sharp gaze. It wasn't a question. Which plan do you want to hear, Mr. Eraserhead? I'm always planning a thing or 10. At the hero's look, he half shrugged, gesturing vaguely at the laptop he was typing on. But currently, the main one is the downfall of Endeavor. There is only one reason I won't work for someone, they continued in the silence that followed their declaration, and when it comes to heroes that I won't, I make a point to let the public know. And I tear them down from the pedestal they place themselves on. Alright, why wouldn't you work with someone then? If they've done something so horrible I can no longer tolerate them, or their reason for wanting information is a bad one, most of the time I'm far more lenient with heroes, but I can't stand it when they try and use the leniency everyone gives them to purposefully hurt others. Innocence. I won't stand for it. I see. Even if I didn't disapprove of him before, I would still be doing this though. He aimed his fire at Ri. While she was asleep. He made her cry. So, I am going to destroy. Eraserhead has never been afraid of the bright, green child. It was pretty hard to be. He looked so young, especially with how small he was and his freckles, and while he was determined, he seemed to only see the good in others, not to mention all the times in the short time he had known the child he had neared tears. All in all, he didn't make for a very threatening figure. But in that moment he could see how the child could have faced the organization 𝐴𝐻𝐼 had struggled to even find for months. A group with strong quirks and trained pro fighters, and yet the muttering greenette still came out on top without a scratch. If he was a lesser man, he would even be a little afraid at the steely, determined light in the other's eyes. Oh, legally, of course, I'm not. I didn't mean, I wasn't, I don't think I even could, I mean, you say how that went. And just like that, the moment was over and the awkward preteen was back. And wasn't that at least slightly disconcerting? It was now officially going on the 12th hour of Deku's anti-endeavor campaign, and Present Mike was more than a little concerned for the kid. You should be getting to bed just about now, don't you think? It's getting sort of late. Yes, well, I'm on a bit of a time crunch here. Keep it down though, Air is sleeping and I doubt anyone wants to wake up Mystery Racerhead. And you should be asleep too. They had at least managed a loud indoor voice. It was a really good thing Air was such a deep sleeper if he was going to be spending a long time in the hospital for observation, or whatever the doctors were calling it. I need to finish this. Some accounts are really putting up a good fight, and after that I need to update a few of my files and I need to deal with a few things before I can send out the 3 short reports I promised, not to mention I'm waiting for someone and dash. I get it, you're busy. But sleep is a really important thing too. See? Even 𝐀𝐮𝐿 goes to sleep every now and then. One of Present Mike's gesturing hands smacked the mentioned hero straight in the face, knocking the hero off his shoulder where he had been previously sleeping. Sweat slipped down the side of his face as he laughed nervously, glancing between Deku, who still hadn't looked up from the laptop, and the demon he had just literally smacked awake. Yamada, the name was ground out, causing the sweat to begin pouring down his face like a waterfall. Deku, some help over here. Deku didn't even look up, caught up once again in his own world, or rather, others' worlds and thoughts. They turned their attention back to the now awake Izuku. WWW. You're up early. Yeah. I'm going to end you. As if to make up from the total silence that had consumed the room completely, the room erupted in a cacophony of sound as Present Mike made a dash for the door, knocking the 2 chairs to the ground with a clatter and taking the other with it, buying himself enough time to reach the exit before he was caught by the ever-present capture cloth. He managed to cling to the door even with a few tugs, stammering vague platitudes and attempting to explain how murder was bad and they should make the hero's choice and spare him. It would be much quicker after all. He could go straight back to sleep. Just as Present Mike was resigning himself to the inevitable, a quiet giggle interrupted them. The children. Present Mike cried, releasing the door to gesture towards the now awake Air. You can't kill me in front of children. Present Mike, now no longer clinging to anything, was shoved out the door. You're right, you two. Behave. The door slammed firmly shut behind them. They seem lively, don't you think? Slipping from the darkness was an unnaturally tall, willowy, white-haired man. His covered eyes glinted in the window's limited light like that of a wolf's beneath dark, tinted lenses. I suppose, but if you put your life on the line daily like that, who can begrudge them a bit of fun? Deku responded absently, his fingers continuing to fly across the keys. Yes. The newcomer leaned forward, a sharp claw-like nail taping on the computer screen. With all the work and danger they put up with, who can judge them for resting some? Jean. I didn't mean, they're stuck in the spotlight, it's really not the SA dash. You know I didn't mean it like that, besides this is for my own selfish motivations. Ah yes, your selfish motive. To help a family get out from under a false hero's thumb. 𝐻𝐿𝐿, I'd really hate to see what you think is being selfless. I don't really think I ever am. Jean laughed easily, head thrown back for a second before shaking his head. You, 𝐻𝐿𝐿, are just about as close as one can get to being an angel. And that's coming from me. Who is your friend though? She seems new. Izuku spluttered helplessly for a moment before recovering. Oh right, Jean, this is my new sister Kobayashi Air. This is Tanaka Jean. Jean is fine, your family to 𝐻𝐿𝐿 now after all. Air nodded shyly from the other side of Deku, glancing once at him for reassurance before returning to stare at the man standing beside them, who offered a smile and a small wave, carefully not revealing any teeth. Oh okay, what do you mean? Why do you call him 𝐻𝐿𝐿 though? The man grinned in genuine amusement, this time flashing sharpened rows of thin fangs at them. Because he can do anything, and one day the whole world will take note and lay itself at his feet. I'm not trying to take over the world. The 2 pale-haired people exchanged grins. Of course not, Jean patted his head, but one day you'll all the same have the power to change its path. If you don't already, with your fire it's inevitable that you will, and you'll always have us at your back. So remember that, got it? You freed too many of us from places where death was the best outcome we could even dream of for us to ever leave your side. Izuku's face turned beet red. You're really giving me too much credit here. I'm sure all of you would have found a way yourself, you especially 𝐻𝐮. I did notice some of your plans. I mean, sure, it was only the beginning, but they weren't for the escape you're thinking. Oh. Deku. Deku turned to pat Air on the head and pull her close. Hey Air, look at this. Deku's eyes glanced around the screen before landing on a comment he'd already seen. We've got official support. Phase 3 is a go. 𝐻𝐮 smiles slightly at him before lightly shoving his forehead with the back of a single finger, which I hope is super secret information broker code for getting some rest. Dikairu, believe it or not, most people get a solid 6 hours at least. The world won't end. I'll even keep an eye on it for you. You don't need to do that. 𝐻𝐮 faked a yawn, causing 2 more to echo his. Really? You don't actually plan on dash? 𝐻𝐮 yawned again, even wider. 2 yawns followed yet again. I got it. Izuku settled down in the covers, making sure his burnt back was face up, shoving the now closed computer at 𝐻𝐮 with his one good hand. Good night, 𝐻𝐮. Go to sleep, Deku. 𝐻𝐮 patted the informant's fluffy hair. Night, Izu. Already half asleep and his mind oddly fuzzy with the cocktail of painkillers the doctors still insisted on, Deku barely even realized the slip-up, much less catch on to who else was in the room at the time. 𝐻𝐮 grinned eerily as he absently shut the curtains, cutting off the only source of light in the room, and settled back down in his corner to keep watch. It was quiet when the pro heroes returned to the room, with not even the light from Deku's laptop casting a glow about the room. Much to their relief, they had thought he was never going to go to sleep despite his injuries and clear tiredness. About time the brat went to sleep, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 muttered, using one hand to casually reach over muffle whatever Yamada was going to shout in case Deku wasn't a deep sleeper. Somehow they couldn't see him as one, so it was hardly safe to be making more than minimal noise, and dragging him over to the chairs, which now stood upright again. Together they tensed as realization dawned. Deku was practically tied to the bed after all, and Air wouldn't be awake enough to think of it even if it was likely she would, and began carefully scanning the room far more thoroughly than before. Present Mike allowing his eyes to drift seemingly lazily to divert any suspicion. Not freezing for more than a half second, he calmly continued over to the chairs and sat down, pretending to let his guards down by acting completely unaware. It wouldn't work for Eraserhead. The mere sight of his high school friend acting with any of the same nonchalance set off so many red flags. He always had an eye out for their surroundings, checking rooms as they entered them, or entering in bizarre ways to catch the occupants off guard. You just had to know where to look to see it. And with how little information they had, they definitely needed to be careful now. Sure, Air could have moved the chairs, but the odds were not that high. The duo found him at the same time, 𝐀𝐮𝐴 preparing his capture cloth and once again taking the proactive approach, although Yamada did prepare for a fight and speaking up. Who are you? Yikes, you don't really have any manners, do you? It's only polite to introduce yourself first. That man was abnormally tall, but not extremely so, and dressed in loosely fitting, colorless, casual clothes consisting of a gray long-sleeved shirt and black briefs. His limp gray hair was pulled loosely back, but long strands still hung into his face, which was partially covered by dark glasses that held an eerie light behind them. This is a private hospital room after visiting hours. I won't ask again. Well, we appear to be in the same boat then, don't we? Whoa. They quickly raised both hands as the cloth shot towards them, ducking as they went. I'm Tanaka 𝐻𝐮, Dikairu mentioned I'd be coming. Probably. Is this guy joking? Yamada muttered for him. It was muttering. It would be pretty loud for anyone else. Deku actually did call for someone by that name. Can you prove you know him? Yamada now turned to Aizawa. Are you joking? Sure. Of course I can prove I know him. I've got a photo of us on me. But can you? After all, it was a hero that put him here, suffering from burn wounds and who knows what else. The kid know us. But if we're avoiding waking him up and ignoring I was the one who called the ambulance and brought said hero in, then sure, Present Mike also has a photo. Eraserhead felt smugly pleased that Yamada had insisted on taking so many photos while they were at UA in that moment, no matter how much he had complained at the time. And no, he didn't care he was being petty. Now or back then? Where does he even find these people? Tanaka muttered unhappily. pulling out from his wallet a photo of a younger Izuku standing on a raised root with Tanaka sitting beside him so they were close to the same height. There he is with me a few years ago. It's almost funny how short he was back then. I would have sworn he was under 4 feet, if I wasn't sure nobody would find my corpse if he found out. Jean laughed easily like they weren't talking about murder. Fine, 𝐀𝐮𝐽𝐷 grumbled. Present Mike pulled out his phone and after searching decided on a photo of the 4 of them along with Midnight Eraserhead stared tiredly at the camera as he slumped uncaring in a headlock. Okay then. I'm keeping an eye on them for a while. Do what you want. Tanaka crossed back over across the room and gracefully flopped onto the floor resting an arm on their knee, the other absently scratching at a paper as if doodling. It did not go unnoticed by either hero as he slipped an earpiece into one ear. Exchanging looks, Present Mike got comfortable while Eraserhead settles down to keep an eye on the room. He would wake the other up when it was time for his shift, or when something strange seemed to be going on. Neither of them attempted to talk any further. When morning came, Present Mike watched Tanaka slink over to the boy and tap the other's forehead gently with the back of one finger before sliding their sketchbook and a folded piece of its paper to rest by their neck. They tapped their head one more time and then nodded to Present Mike and leaving. Nudging 𝐀𝐮𝐷 awake, he followed only to find a deserted corridor. He carefully looked around to catch a glimpse of the odd man before giving it up as a lost cause and going to get the others some breakfast. He might as well make the most of it and stretch his legs. Besides, he ate hospital food too often considering his chosen profession. He didn't plan on eating it when he was well too. The scene he returned to was not at all like the one he had left behind. For one, no one was sleeping, and for two, it wasn't peaceful anymore. For one, the door had been knocked clean off its hinges and was warped by the flames. Dead center of the now scorched room stood 𝐸𝐴𝑉𝑟 in all of his flaming glory. In front of him, glaring ferociously despite his state, was Izuku, who had clearly taken the worst of the flames, blood seeping from his new wounds, mild burns covering his body and his capture cloth burnt beyond recognition, much less use. A footstone slammed on his chest, hindering his already labored breathing as he was sent to the floor. They had clearly been caught off guard. You will stop this, Eraserhead. I may respect your work as a hero, but this is your last warning. Don't think I won't gauge your precious eyes out. That was all it took. Present Mike slid to the side. He didn't want to send the number 2 hero into where Deku lay helpless, struggling against where he had been practically tied to the bed, and screamed as loudly as he could. 𝐸𝐴𝑉𝑟 hit the corner of the wall with a crash and kept going, smashing into the next room and out of the building as he held on for as long as he could, not allowing the noise to wane off. He stood there breathing heavily for a few seconds to appease his aching lungs before his mind caught up. He wouldn't be able to fight 𝐸𝐴𝑉𝑟 successfully, not by himself, and 𝐀𝐮𝐷 needed medical attention right then. Plus there were the other patients to keep in mind. He doubted 𝐸𝐴𝑉𝑟 had been sent more than a couple blocks. Thinking as quickly as he could before tossing his unlocked phone to Deku. Call as many heroes as you can hear. Tell them 𝐸𝐴𝑉𝑟 has gone rogue. Once 𝐸𝐴𝑉𝑟 is far enough away, get the doctors to help 𝐀𝐮𝐷. Yamada took off at a run, jumping out of the building through the newly created opening and using his screams to slow his descent. And don't try that at home, kids. Deku wasted no time beginning to dial numbers to explain the situation, starting with the ones the other hero had favorited, the names barely registering. He figured those that knew Present Mike best would be most likely to respond. Moving on to the regular contacts, and barely stopping himself before he called Cammy Woods and, to his horror, a member of 𝐸𝐴𝑉𝑟's own agency. He had to spend more time explaining the situation to these, but many had already heard about the situation by then. All the while, as he talked for what felt like hours but what was really just 5 or 6 minutes, he tapped away on his computer to email or get a hold of even one member from his group. This was his fault. How could he have been so weak? That's what he was. He even made sure whenever someone talked to him he would be reminded, yet somehow he had forgotten already. He was useless. A blockhead, straw man. Easy to manipulate. Stupid. Useless. Couldn't do anything right. He would be sure he wouldn't forget again, but later, he had to do what he could for now. He'd gotten the nurses in already, who had immediately hustled Eraserhead off for treatment. He had been assured the other would be fine. He'd insisted that they take air and look her over as well until a relative came to pick her up. Sliding out of the bed, ignoring the searing pain that shot up from the bottom of his feet, he moved over, grabbing the mask, already reset and ready for use, and a jacket. He slid both on, pulling up the hood, and took off through the hole that remained in the wall. They were on the 5th story, but that was fine. He'd practiced this, not to mention all the actual use the skill had gotten when he had at first started his trade. It took no time at all for him to reach ground level and then to descend below into the sewers. He had to begin preparations. The first step was to figure out the flow of the fight and who was involved. Then came the second step. Step 3 should take a half hour if he was lucky, but he would need a backup location for the off chance. With that in mind, he could do step 2. He'd need to plan out all possible outcomes for the next 30 minutes, hour and a half markers. It was time to redirect the city's water. The final step for his plan was the issue he wouldn't be able to plan for when they would arrive, or if. And that could cause problems. Dear God, he hoped Jean was right. This was his fault and he needed to fix it. But even if that was the case, he'd rather get help than anyone else get hurt because of him. He'd messed up big time. This was his fault and he was useless. Why couldn't he do anything right? 𝐻𝐿𝐻. Hey, 𝐻𝐿𝐻. A hand waved in front of his face. You said you had a plan. And there was Jean, grinning with fangs on full display beside him, the sisters Suzy and Sarah, and behind them 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and company. Yes, I think I do, although it'll be far easier with your guys' help if you're offering. Just leave it to us, boss. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 grinned as the sisters gave either a salute or a thumbs up. Ko nodded. So what's the word, 𝐻𝐿𝐻? Alright Ko, I need you to. He would fix this. He became what he was to help others. He should have known he would mess it up. Flames leapt from the streets to the buildings and their crumpled fronts in what must have looked like a truly apocalyptic scene, only added to by the completely undisturbed, albeit empty, streets that accompanied it. Fire trucks and ambulances waited in a line behind the police blockades that capped the street. Heroes stood at hand to enforce it, a great many even lining the rooftops like a flock of overgrown parrots. Amidst the chaos there was a single man, standing tall even while encircled by 6 of his fellows. Midnight stood directly behind him, best genist quirk, fiber answer and backdraft a water control quirker on one side and present Mike and on the other. Standing almost dead center in front of him was Miruko the rabbit hero, an unnamed quirk, and Hawk's quirk, fierce wings. All of them looked more than a little worse for wear, yet no one jumped in to help. It was disappointing to watch. All those heroes that just sat around watching, even while keeping a perimeter was important, they could have swapped out when the fighters tired. Endeavor wasn't immune to his own flames. They could easily tire him out and win that way. Yet there they all stood lining the rooftops, standing behind officers. All watching and yet no one taking any action. It was times like these when he began to wonder. What had he ever seen in the world? But why would that matter? He couldn't do anything either way. He shut the thoughts down as they tried to creep up and overtake his mind. His eyes refocused on the 6 fighters, waiting for the signal to start. There were still people fighting, so all was not lost. And even if he couldn't do much, he had to do something to help. Even if he could only help a little bit. K boss, L team is complete. Got it? K team, are you a go? The offensive team is ready to go. Deku, give us a countdown. Suzy responded. He could practically see her grin. Jean snorted loudly over the comms. Hey, that's my nickname for him, make your own. It's different. No, it's not. A is a go in 5. Speak now or forever hold your peace, guys. We're about to step into the spotlight. No one spoke up. So, Deku took in a final deep breath, nodding to himself before he spoke. Initiate plan A. Initiate plan A. A swirl of a near-transparent film, almost like the liquid used for bubbles, circled easily onto the battlefield, floating along invisible air currents towards where the heroes were facing off. A thin shimmering strand formed for each of the heroes sans endeavor, coming to rest on them. The area they paused on seemed to grow outward, the strands thickening as the heroes got swamped in it, despite at the same time it seemed like the strange material wasn't changing size at all. The translucent thing lazily covered the struggling heroes and then slipped away into nothingness itself as if it had never been there. 𝐬𝐬𝐴 was left to glare menacingly around the area as if challenging the film to try that with him or for any of the other heroes to take up their places and fight him. Show yourself and fight me, villain. Your cowardly attacks will not work on me. A lone figure loped out of the shadows, a dark cloak covering his head with a scarf-like mask covering his face that the hood didn't. He was dressed solely in black, making the white wolf ears and tail peeking out from holes in the cloak contrast sharply, as well as the pale fangs and bright bloody red lips that made up the grinning snarl painted on the scarf over his mouth. 2 different gold earrings sparkles fully from where they hung from one ear. Villain, that seems like pretty strong words for someone wreaking havoc on the streets. 𝐬𝐬𝐴 once more spoke up demandingly, so you are the one who made them disappear. What is your goal, villain? Whoa, disappear. Pull back there, buddy. Hold your horses. That is a pretty big accusation there. They look tired, they're just resting up for round 2, you know. I'm just here to keep you busy meanwhile. He sent a blatant distasteful look at the watching heroes. Well, to be fair, and to answer your question I suppose, he wasn't the one to actually do that either. A new person hopped down from the 2nd floor of a building. This one's face was veiled in gold and blue that matched the clothes that hung loosely about them. A black necklace dangled on their neck and black rings rested atop silky gloves. With a vague gesture they continued talking. But that wasn't what you really cared about, was it? Do you have any other questions before we get to the beatdown? I mean, do you really think you'll win? What do you mean to imply by that, you and your little friend the sun beneath my toes? I've never even seen or heard of you before. You don't stand a chance. Flames exploded around him before sharply dying down again to lick around him. The second raised their arms making an airy placating gesture. Fine, why are you causing this whole scene anyway? What do you mean why? 𝐬𝐬𝐴 thundered, his flames rising once more as he spoke, unmindful of the first one's snickers. That useless 𝐒𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 decided to challenge me. Who does he think he is with that useless information quirk of his? He might as well be quirkless. The snickers cut off with a growl. That no-good brat decided to try and get rid of all my hard work just because he didn't like how I raised my children. Look at 𝐬𝐿, he's at you. Does that brat even know how hard it is to get accepted there, and he dares question my methods? Dares to challenge me. They easily glided closer in a movement so natural it was difficult to notice just what he was doing, blue and gold fabric drifting soundlessly after him, so the accusations are false. No, but does that really matter? Look where he ended up. A true testament to my legacy. No. The word was cold and seemed to resonate much louder despite the calmer tone. Not your legacy. If he becomes a hero, it will be to his own hero name's credit, not for your glory. 𝐬𝐬𝐴 turned to the one dressed in black as they spoke up. And with that truth said, the second took control again, dramatically raised their arms up, flicking their palms to face 𝐬𝐬𝐴 at the end of the motion. Water spouted up in a stream that encircled 𝐬𝐬𝐴, splashing out onto the first one's clothes, but the spiraling wave itself only brushing their feet. The blue one swept their arms next, and a new rush of water rose up answering the call, this one from directly behind them, and went sweeping to greet 𝐬𝐬𝐴. The introduction of even more water twisting and tearing about them making escape even more difficult. The one in black hopped back at the second wave, carefully making a show of skirting around the flood's end point, leaping over the second's continuing stream to lean casually on them. The air between the two far too much like this was an average day for them to be described as anything but casual as they stood amidst the surging tide. A few words were whispered between the two before a form was spotted gliding through the water with preternatural ease. A gurgling scream resounded through the air, muffled by the frothing liquid, and then the waters calmed, slowly sinking down to reveal the still mildly flooded battleground. The ground was cracked and uneven in more places than not, large chunks missing, and the buildings weren't much better off, and everything seemed to be completely soaked in water, although none seemed to have touched the blockades. In a more positive light, the fires had long since been put out and much of the water was draining away. The fight had been over in an instant, if that. The police surged forward, removing the blockade to let the emergency vehicles through. Just as they reached the pair, however, the veiled one raised a hand in the stop gesture. Both of the figures seemed to shimmer as they stood there. The veiled one showed their empty hands for a moment as if they were a magician preparing for their next trick, posing one hand momentarily at the ready, and then they snapped. Just like that, the two were gone as if they had never been there. It wasn't much longer before the 6 missing heroes were returned, each lying unconscious, with their wounds painstakingly treated, on stretchers, 3 where the first came from, 3 where the second had been. The authorities immediately acted, rushing over to check on them and put anyone with quirks capable of healing to work dealing with the damage. The fight cleanup was already underway, meaning it was time to go before they got too far into it and escape became difficult. Deku motioned for the 3 with him to follow, and the 4 of them quickly made their way together to hopefully find 𝐻𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 at the agreed-upon meeting place before things calmed enough for people to notice Deku was missing. Deku wanted there to be no connections to be made between him and the mysterious heroes that debuted just seconds ago. Even though the heroes that they had replaced fighting Endeavor would swear they were shown free quirk use licenses by the masked duo, it still wouldn't look good for the very person who Endeavor was looking for to have strong ties to them at the moment. Especially if the 2 were to be used later in the mess. Of course, they would never be able to play a major part even if they weren't counting on complete anonymity. So, how do you think it went? 𝐻𝐮 grinned at the group of 4 as they entered. He was leaning against the bar in comfortable but colorful for him clothes. A deep red shirt and navy sweatpants. You guys were amazing. Deku enthused, and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's teamwork was so in sync. 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's face turned a light red. Thanks, boss. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 gave a joking salute. I was including you in the yours part. You did beautifully. I doubt anyone even imagined the honesty behind the confession was partly gotten because of your quirk. And you played your part superbly. Not to mention you, Suzy, well done with the camera duty. Thanks, but you were a majorly big help. Deku acknowledged the comment with a smile, but otherwise moved on, and 𝐬𝐶, perfect timing with the wave. I know precision can be tricky, especially as you and 𝐾𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 couldn't fully communication. 𝐻𝐮 wonderfully done with preparation and relay too. I know you'd have done amazing if it came to course B. Course it wouldn't come to that 𝐷𝐿. You made the plan after all. No plan stands first contact. I didn't really do much. We're really lucky you guys carried it out so flawlessly, not to mention your teamwork. The sisters exchanged a sad look at the deflected comment before Suzy reached over, sticking him in a headlock and ruffling hair. Keep telling yourself that, fearless leader, one day we'll have you admitting exactly how good you are. The group settled down after that, Deku taking a moment to glance over them. They were a bit roughed up, but they seemed happy and relaxed, a large change from how they were when he had originally pulled the group together. Tanaka 𝐻𝐮 was inhumanly tall, seeming to lean on the tall side of 6 feet low 7, and at his actual age he might still grow more. He looked far older than he actual was since his quirk appeared. He had a fake ID to run the bar since he had started it when he was underaged. His hair was long and white, held in a low ponytail but with a few small bunches of strands hanging around his face and shoulder. He covered his eyes with sunglasses as he always did in the light of day. Ito Katsuo was about average height with shocking bright, sky blue hair that he dyed brown from around just above the ends of his ears to the lower ends where sometimes it ran blue again. Deku was never sure if that was purposeful or not, and he wouldn't guess either. With Katsuo both options was fairly likely. His hair really was that shocking shade of blue though. His eyes were a darker brown than the dyed parts of his hair, with the tiniest flecks of a lighter golden brown if you looked close enough. Johnson Suzy was a few inches above average height and had sharp hazel eyes alongside roughly cut, short, brown hair that always seemed to fall into her face. Overall, she had very average features and a weaker presence, causing many people tended to overlook her for it. Suzy, appearance aside, was not someone easily overlooked, as she was highly observant and could argue with the best. The topic caught her interest. Both she and her sister were not from the country, having arrived just days before meeting him. Suzy always made a point of carrying the same pink backpack with her wherever she went. Always, even if she had to use her quirk to sneak it past security points. Deku wasn't quite sure what was in it. Johnson 𝐶𝐶 was the sister to Suzy, although Deku doubted they were related through BLD, and tended to be far quieter than Suzy. She was also around average height but had blonde hair and eyes a different shade of hazel. Her hair was also kept short, but she pulled hers back to form a small ponytail. She tended to stick to baggy clothes while her sister wore shorts and both wore boots. Ko or Velho to the sisters, or Kajit to Jean, was short for 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐵 was even quieter than 𝐬𝐶, only talking when needed. He kept his hair fairly short but was always dyeing his hair new colors. This time it was a horribly light green. His eyes, however, were light blue and always seemed foggy and far off, as if he was in a different world as everyone else. He was a bit below average, although that still put him taller than Izuku. 𝐻𝐻, not that we don't enjoy your company, but you've been staring out into space muttering for a while now, and don't you need to return to the hospital? This can't be good for your burns. Burns. 𝐬𝐶 burst into the conversation, frowning in big sisterly disapproval. I know, right? I don't see anything, but he is wearing that jacket. You okay? You aren't hurt, are you? Suzy tilted her head as if it would give her a new perspective. I'm fine, don't worry. The group frowned at his casual dismissal. But you are right, it'll look bad if I go missing for too long. I should head back. 𝐬𝐶 sighed. Let me then. All right. Deku felt the familiar feeling of 𝐬𝐶's filmy teleportation quirk spreading over him as Katsuo called out a final parting. Despite himself, Deku hoped they would visit him. Having arrived in the hospital room in one piece, Deku quickly padded over to the hospital bed and sat down. It looked like he might have to wait a while, and it was just his luck that he couldn't even distract himself with work. His computer lay uselessly on the foot of the bed, burnt to a crisp. Sliding his arms from the jacket sleeves, he resolved himself to do the next best thing and pulled from one of the pockets the sketchbook Jean had left him. At least he didn't have to just sit there and analyze all of his mistakes over and over again on repeat. That could wait. And, trigger warning, mentions of bullying and suicide. It turned out he shouldn't have worried so much about being caught absent. It had been hours since he had returned and not one person had set foot in the room. Honestly, if he didn't know Eraserhead and Present Mike had been just lightly injured in the fight, he would have worried. He'd already made sure Jean with Katsuo went to retrieve air from the nurses, after reminding them at least 6 separate times to say his name was Kobayashi instead of Tanaka. That would have been bad, especially considering the recent attack. Despite his attempt at alertness, his mind was soon wandering off to sleep, the adrenaline wearing off far too quickly for his tastes. His quickly healing thank evolution for healing Quirk's wounds, adding a throbbing melody now that the effects of the pain medications were fading with the adrenaline that seemed to lull him even more into the grips of an uneasy sleep. What do you to tell him? Opal, don't just. A commotion in the hallways snapped him from the haze he had fallen into. Sliding off the bed only to wince as he felt the weight of his whole body press on his badly burned feet, now without the numbing help of the painkillers. With a slight cry, he crumbled to the ground, barely able to manage to contain the sound of his yelp as he landed on his burnt side, as his sluggish mind prevented him from twisting to divert his fall onto the other side in time. The door slammed open despite the ongoing feeble protests of one of the hospital's nurses in the background. Even with adrenaline beginning to course through his veins at the thought of the unknown person, with his completely vulnerable position sprawled on the floor, unable to move, even with the pain making itself fully known again and sending black spots through his vision and BLD pounding in his ears, even with all of this, Midoriya Izuku once more found his vision fading as he passed out. Vaguely, he found himself wondering if that meant he would have to explain himself more or less for his possible absence. If he woke up as he thought he would, with painkillers polluting his bloodstream to high heaven, he certainly hoped it would be the latter. He actually wasn't sure anymore how well he could lie at the moment. That was a first in a really, really long time. Deku stood in a far too familiar surrounding. Or rather, not so much stood as looked over. Before him was, in all its soul-stealing glory, his middle school campus. He had gone back to it after he had begun his practice. After all, how could he help others if he couldn't face a small building he'd made a point of visiting at night? But that didn't matter, it still counted for something, at least to him. But that wasn't what caught his attention about the scene. It was the 4 boys that stood off to one side that did. But most notably, the shortest one who stood before the 4 and faced them. Just as he knew there had once been a 6th person, he knew what the lone student was going to say. That wasn't very nice, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. You shouldn't use your quirk to hurt others. What would you know, you useless Deku? You don't even have one. Explosions punctuated the lead boy's words as they leaped from his palms, the three behind him likewise smirking, their own quirks at the ready. As if he could ever dream of getting past 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 to reach them. So he stood at the ready, braced for whatever they threw at them, because even while still in elementary school he knew he stood no chance. And that no one would reach out to help him. Still, you can't be a very good hero if you're always attacking others. What was that? I'm going to be the very best hero. Better than even all might, and nobody is going to get in my way, much less you. The blonde-haired boy charged then, with the others soon following, one going as far as to dump out his eye-catching yellow backpack out on the sidewalk. It was just his luck that the one book he'd have given anything for it not to happen to, the only one that was irreplaceable, was the one to slide to rest at 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's feet. Desperately he made a scramble for it, only for his fingers to be ruthlessly squashed beneath their boot, as they picked up the book and scoffed, "What's this? Hero analysis for my future? You don't actually think you could ever be a hero, do you? My God, you really are a Deku. Let me get this through your thick skull now, you can't and will never be a hero. In fact, if you want to be a hero so bad, I'll tell you what, why don't you do us all a favor and take a swan dive off a roof? Maybe in the next life you'll have a quirk." With that said, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 pressed his hands together, scorching the notebook as it caught fire, a few pages and torn pieces either falling onto the walkway or drifting into the open wind. "Here, let me help you get rid of this fire before you burn your quirkless self with it. It's not like it was ever going to be useful for anything anyway." With that said, the notebook was tossed carelessly to the fountain that had sat previously undisturbed a short distance away. With a few parting blows and words, the unusually small green-haired and eyed child was left curled up with his belongings scattered about. Yet he was strong and more than a little used to it, so giving himself a moment to collect himself, he pulled himself together and gathered his stuff, pushing it carelessly into the discarded bag. Then he hurried to try and rescue his notebook. It was no use. It was not in a good mindset that he started home, sticking to the lesser-used paths that would take him directly home and avoid the rushing of the crowds. It was almost peaceful if not for his darkening thoughts, and because of them, he didn't realize the slime monster sliding up behind him until it was too late. Regardless of all the times he withstood 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's teasing, and the number of times he had been otherwise roughed up by classmates, he had never felt fear like this. Those times he had a warning. He had a small voice that whispered they'd at least leave him alive, so nothing went on their record, quirks or not. It didn't matter if the victim was dead unless they spoke of potential, and no one wanted murder on their records so early. But now he was struggling for all he was worth as slop filled his nose, his mouth, his eyes, making drawing even a single breath of fresh air a sheer impossibility. He had never felt so hopeless in his life. And he hated it. And then just as suddenly as it came, he was free and could breathe again, gasping the blackness from his eyes, his vision returning bit by precious bit. Eyes watering slightly, he nonetheless turned to thank his savior, only to be met by a sight he had never expected to see anywhere off-screen. Never mind so close, never mind one-on-one or being saved by them. By All Might. Vaguely he almost thought it was worth it. The attack, every miserable moment in the last 5 years of his life, as long as it all led up to this moment. But he knew he was selfish, and he needed to ask the question that now plagued his mind. Thank you so much. No problem, my boy. Now you must excuse me, I must dash." They picked up the bottled sludge villain and made to go with it clutched in their grip. They didn't think, just moved, and next they knew they were soaring across the sky, tightly gripping onto All Might's leg. No, wait, dash. It was an oddly freeing moment being up there. Free as a bird. When they landed, words once more evaded them as they tried to catch their breath, but the same could not be said for the pro-hero, who began lecturing them the moment they touched down. Please, I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking, but there is something I must ask you. Is it possible? Can someone without a quirk become a hero? I know it would be hard, unheard of really, but if they were truly determined and willing to face whatever obstacles came up, is it possible? The hero was silent for a half-beat, as if judging their worth, their fate. No, I'm sorry, it is challenging enough for people with great and awe-inspiring quirks to become a hero. For someone completely without a quirk it would be impossible. But I'm sure with that determination there is plenty else you could become, like a police officer or a politician. These are also very important jobs, and far more realistic. I must go. The symbol of peace held up the bottled slime villain and took off once more with a single bound. I am now exiting. Like a hero. Deku didn't see them land a short ways away and shrink down to an emancipated figure, nor did they see the blood that squirted from his mouth at the effort it had taken. With a sad, faraway look in his eyes, All Might trudged off to deliver the bottle to the police. They didn't look back at the roof they had just left where Izuku stood. Abandoned once more, but this time more disparaged than they had ever been. Even when Bakugo was at his absolute worst, Izuku stood by the railing of the deserted rooftop. He had laid himself at the mercy of the #1 hero, the pillar of righteousness, and they had said the same everyone else had. They had found him unworthy. Why don't you do us all a favor and take a swan dive off a roof? Maybe in the next life you'll have a quirk. The words seemed to echo endlessly in his head. I'm sorry, Izuku, I'm so sorry, you won't ever be a hero. His mother's words joined them, said to him when he was just 5, despairingly seeking for comfort with his world torn to shreds not even hours before. No, I'm sorry, it is challenging enough for people with great and awe-inspiring quirks to become a hero. For someone completely without a quirk it would be impossible. All Might's booming voice joined the swarm, filling his head so he couldn't think. The railing went swimming into his vision. I'm sorry, Izuku, so sorry, do us all a favor and take a swan dive without a quirk, it would be impossible. I'm sorry, Izuku, swan dive, impossible, jump without a quirk, stupid, useless, Deku, jump, so sorry, Deku. So sorry, jump. Izuku moves without thinking. And jumped, falling through the wind as peace finally washed over him, the voices fading into a blissful silence, allowing him to think clearly once more. And then he realized what he had done and panic took over. What was he thinking? How could he just, what would his mom do? He didn't want to go, didn't want to die like this. And then it was over, the terror receding as he was caught, arms wrapping around him and roughly throwing him over one shoulder so his cheek hit their back. He'd been caught. Izuku flopped like a fish as he woke with a jolt while lying on his stomach, with the feeling of the air being pushed from him like it had been that day so many years ago. Distantly he knew it was just the memory of the feeling, but that knowledge didn't keep him from savoring the air as he gasped, taking deep breaths to calm his beating heart. That was when he realized the distinct lack of fog coating his brain, but not just that, also the lack of pain. He'd been completely healed. Recovery Girl made a visit. Considering there were so many heroes hurt in Endeavor's capture, you should still keep off your feet for a few days, and your back too since those got the worst of it. Twisting slightly to view the speaker, he saw Eraserhead sitting calmly in a visitor's chair by his head, yet oddly enough she couldn't heal you completely. Something about already being pretty exhausted. Care to share anything? Not good, he thought vaguely. He was still pretty thrown off from his dream. Not really, it was probably just the stress from the attack. Not all of us are pro-heroes who deal with this daily, you know. I'd say nice try, but for you it really wasn't. Besides, I've seen the video footage of the fight. You were perfectly calm and your one concern was air, which I know wasn't the case this time because some nurses mentioned they had been keeping an eye on her until her father, a tall, polite, white-haired man, came to get her. By the name of Jean. Yes, well, I am an information broker. You know, I can't just give away info like that. My clients will start demanding it too. They clearly were more thrown off than they thought. The hero sat in silence observing him long. Enough that he felt oddly uncomfortable and had to twist the urge to fidget or stutter out whatever would make him stop or break eye contact with the intense eyes that stared him down. Finally they spoke again, their tone sounding significantly more concerned than before. Are you sure you're all right, brat? WhatIf think so? If you say so, just know you've got people here for you. They rose, shuffling their way towards the doorway. They didn't want to disturb your sleep, but you've got some visitors here for you. I'll let them in. Big brother. Eri threw herself into the room and jumped on the foot of the bed as he pulled himself up with some degree of difficulty. Aye. Little listener. So great to see you're alive still. We were worried. Present Mike followed, coming to stand behind her. In the doorway Katsuo saluted, leaning on the frame and pushing 𝐻𝐿 in with his free hand. "Hiya, boss. About time you woke up. They send their regards by the way and ask if the bi-monthly occurrence will continue as planned." The bi-monthly occurrence was not actually bi-monthly, of course, but was instead the meetup scheduled for every full moon between the normal group, 𝐻𝐿, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, 𝐶𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, and themselves. They were being intentionally cryptic about it, and considering the sheer number of every other month and twice-a-month events, they did an okay job too. "Of course it will," 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and 𝐻𝐿 grinned. "I'll be sure to tell them that. 𝐬𝐻𝐼t. What's the bi-monthly occurrence? It sounds super secret." 𝐻𝐿's toothy grin widened as he made his way silently, so he was fully into the room and invading present Mick's personal space, though the hero didn't notice yet. "𝐀𝐮," they sing-songed, gliding away as silently as they had approached when the pro-hero jumped and turned toward them. They kept themselves directly behind the other's back as they continued, because they slid back to stand innocently a few feet away when they turned this time. "It absolutely is, of course. You see, Hikaru here is actually a super powerful shadow leader for the whole entire world and dash. No matter how hard you try it won't work." "Tanaka," 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 cut him off. "What? It was believable this time. Do you even know how many countries there are?" "I don't know. Like 10 maybe. 11. Is that too much?" "Dear God, Tanaka, how have you managed for so long?" "It is, isn't it? I knew I should have said 6. There's like over 100, and you say I can't make up believable lies. Dikairu, help me out here." "He's actually right for dash." "What do you mean, actually, boss?" "Actually, there was something like 200 states before the appearance of quirks, although that's changed a bit over the years." "Oh come on, don't join him, Dikairu. Look it up if you don't believe me then." "I don't know, you could have hacked the internet or something." 𝐻𝐿 eyed him accusingly as he spoke. "Hacked the? How on earth would I do that? I've seen you do some pretty crazy things." 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 burst into laughter. "Tanaka, you're an amazing hacker. How on earth could you believe that possible?" "I don't know, Ito. You haven't seen the things I have. Dikairu can do anything. I'm not over-exaggerating here. I'd rather take on all the Yakuza single-handedly at their greatest point than face him angered." "You'd take on the Yakuza for fun if the boss was willing to give you a specific bit of information or if he just mentioned in passing that he wanted them gone." "You wouldn't." "What? No, of course I would, but that's not the point here." Air's laughter interrupted their argument before it could digress any further than it had already and fall into petty name-calling. "I swear, you guys will say anything to one-up each other when arguing." Deku took the opportunity their distraction offered, cutting off the new snarky comments that were forming before it could start up again. "So cold, boss." "Yeah, Dikairu, just accept our undying loyalty already and take over the world or something." Deku's eyes widened. I have no interest in, I don't know what you mean by that." He glanced off nervously towards where the two pro-heroes stood. "All that stuttering makes it seem far more incriminating, brat." "BWH, he's right, little listener. Although you end up stuttering so often, it's not actually all that unusual." Blame yourself, boss. I have no clue how you find all these weird people." 𝐻𝐿 winked at Deku. "Well, where did he find you?" "What's that supposed to mean?" As Izuku leaned on his hand watching the two bicker with the heroes sometimes joining in, Eri at his side, the past and his dream was shoved far from his mind. A faint smile graced his face. It was late at night when he was finally released from the hospital and 𝐻𝐿 had already taken Eri off to go to bed. It was times like this he was glad he'd told the other how to enter the building when it was closed. Then again, those times did not outnumber the others when he was far too tempted to just alter it, so the way 𝐻𝐿 knew had the greatest chance to activate the defenses, it only took so many times of being woken up at 3 a.m. mere minutes after he'd finally gotten to sleep to the other soaked in a reddish liquid and the greeting following the lines of, "It's not mine, but quick, you gotta help me with something." Turned out that something hadn't been hiding a corpse, but he was drifting from the point. The point was, he was finally headed home and he and Eri could lay around all day and watch quite frankly horrifying cartoon-like movies. That was the thought that had him hurrying home happily, and that was exactly what he did, taking a few days to kick back, recuperate, and simply enjoy life. It was also the thing that made him receive the news so late, which in turn led him to hurrying to UA, dialing his phone as he sprinted in practically a blind panic. An up-and-coming villain organization was planning an attack on the high school. That news wasn't too worrying. What was worrying, however, was the news of the support of a teleportation quirk, an insider, and the growing rumors of an old underground puppet MSTR villain able to grant wishes in exchange for the person's support, going so far as to give people quirks. To top off the pieces that spelled a perfect disaster was the number of villains, low-lifes and thugs that flocked to the cause and whispers of prison breaks. And he'd missed all of this because he was too busy slacking. He just had to hope it wasn't too late to help. He jammed his finger on the call button. I need to talk to Present Mike now. Tell him it's me, Deku, and it's very, very important. He received no response despite trying 2 separate times. As he waited, bouncing on his feet, he twitched nervously, trying to keep an eye out as if he would be able to tell if the League of Villains attack was already underway. Maybe he would. There were quirks that ended up being pretty showy. Just when he was ready to throw caution to the wind and try just running across and waiting for whoever was on security detail to detain him, Present Mike appeared, out of breath. What's wrong, lit dash? Present Mike. Finally. Where's Class 1A right now? Never mind, it doesn't matter. Get in contact with Eraserhead and call them back to the main building. Or send some heroes to check on them. What are you talking about? There's been whispers of an attack on UA, Class 1A specifically. Have a teleportation quirk user with them, no time to explain, just go. Present Mike nodded, pulling an earpiece out of his pocket and calling out a series of commands. He nodded in satisfaction once done and pulled his phone from his pocket. He spared it a glance before tossing it to Deku and pulling him across by the elbow. Follow me and call 𝐀𝐮𝐿. Got it, little listener? Right? Deku hurriedly pressed on the number he knew was Eraserhead's. Very few of the favorited contacts used actual names, but Eraserhead's had a fairly telling picture of a black cat sitting next to a mug with a familiar scarf and goggles and a scowl that made you worry for your safety. There was no response. He tried a few more times to similar results before giving up. He's not picking up. Was it supposed to happen today? You should try to save your breath in case it's needed. But I don't actually know. I had taken a few days off, and when I started delving into what I missed, this was the talk of the town. The ones participating had been on standby for 1 day, but no one knows when it will be. There's talk of an insider though, and of, do you know about? Well, this has to do with All Might, I think. They're aiming to take him down and they're super confident about it too, so there is something being held back from the masses. They have a secret weapon. Got it, so don't drop my guard. I'd say locate whoever is in charge of the teleportation actually, get him out of the way first since I doubt they'll start with their ace, then it doesn't really matter how good it is. Then the focus should be evacuating the class and containing the villains. Although the worrying thing is there were too many mentions of prison breaks for them not to have an in there. Have there been any escapees lately? I could have missed it since I didn't cover everything yet, but I'm fairly sure there'd be a mention who. They would have to be fairly notorious, and with their goal that would mean. Their muttering began even as they ran, breathing for breath, so possibly a well-known hero killer, but they'd have to already have a set goal or else they'd be too unpredictable and they'd need someone whose loyalty they could guarantee at least on a temporary basis. Wait here, kid. Present Mike rushed into the building, leaving Deku at the doorway. Deku quickly placed a few hidden monitoring devices that would transmit feed to his laptop before pulling up his hood and sliding on the mask from his pocket and slipping in. The chaos he was greeted with almost made him falter. Almost. Apparently he had been late, but hopefully not too late. He'd made it before anyone had gotten hurt, although the students seemed to be scattered, and so had the 2 heroes Present Mike has called in to assist. 𝐶𝐮𝐬𝐿 was off to one side, twisting the ground to capture any nearby villains. However, he was struggling with a handful of air and long-ranged based quirks that stayed out of his reach in the air and the trees of a nearby biome. Eraserhead was similarly pestered by long-ranged quirks that stayed out of his sight, as he nullified the quirks of those that succeeded in avoiding the others clawing cement. A few steps behind them was the other hero who had answered Present Mike's call for backup. Fighting in sync with the literature and homeroom teachers was 𝐶𝐮𝐿. picking off the long-ranged villains as best he could, although he was hindered by portals that randomly appeared, turning his well-aimed shots into friendly fire. The three weren't nearly enough to deal with the force they had been greeted with, of course, but it was a start. Present Mike had quickly joined them, screaming down as in up until they were crushed by the roof, and then down some of the attackers that soared through the air. Determined, Deku ran a keen eye across the battlefield, his eyes landing on what seemed to be the ones behind the attack puppet leaders. He was sure of that now, but still the primary guiding force present. With that confirmed, he pulled a face mask up to cover the lower part of his face where his mask didn't cover, and began cutting his way across the battlefield. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice ironically laughed at how productive this training session would be for the potential heroes. Further back, he wondered if he would run into Bakugo while here, if the other would recognize him. He didn't know why, but he couldn't bring himself to call the other 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 anymore, not even in his head. He hadn't tried saying it aloud. As he came up to the gray-haired handyman and the suit-wearing human void, he should feel bad for those comments, shouldn't he? They turned their focus to him. Beside them, an odd creature with a beak loomed, brains showing. Was this the Nomu he'd been hearing so often? Were they the secret weapon? Did that mean they should leave the teleportation user alone so they could retreat and take the muscular, bird-like man with them? What's this? One of the background characters wants to face one of the last bosses. That's fine by me. Shimura Tenko, Tamura now, right? The one with blue-gray hair dropped the carefree attitude, anger flowing in their red eyes. And what would you know, I saw you slip in after the fight with Present Mike. Deku waved their hand lazily despite the terror building in their gut. This would be the first time they tried something like this. That's not all that important. I didn't mean to offend though. Not yet anyway. I have an old friend who always said it was rude to attack without properly acknowledging someone first, although I'm pretty sure they got that device from a fictional villain and twisted it a bit. I mean, they used murder too, but… I'm rambling, aren't I? You may call me Canary. I'd like to have the honor of fighting you. Canary? Like the canary in the coal mines. Well, you'll do, I suppose. Try not to be too boring. Deku chuckled nervously. I'll be sure to lie. They hurriedly dodges as the other lunged, quickly moving to the side as they observed their attacker's form, reaction time, style, recovery time, and looked for old injuries. New ones too, really. He wasn't going to be picky and look a gift horse in the mouth. With a snarl, Shigaraki pivoted, sliding to place himself at Deku's open back, but Deku was prepared for that, dropping down and sweeping his leg out as he turned to face them again. One hand pulled a taser as they went, the other at the ready for any counterattacks. It was unnecessary as Shigaraki leapt back a few steps. You're not so bad a fighter, Canary. What brings you here? Curiosity mostly. I've been hearing about this for a few days. It seemed like it would be big. They trailed off and then ducked, throwing one of the mutant-type quirk users over his shoulder to land roughly in between him and Shigaraki. He is mine. Do you really think I couldn't beat him? Shigaraki growled, barely giving the villain Deku had just flipped a chance to stammer a defense before the new attacker was up in ashes. Why do the useless cannon fodder always insist on interfering? Shigaraki, we do need them right now, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 placated. I know that, but they're just so annoying. Now then, knowing there was no situation where he came out in a good place, the nameless villain took the chance to scamper off. They lunged again. This time Deku caught one hand and safely deflected the other. The quirk seemed to require him to hold an object, so he needed to keep an eye on his hands. He pulled the other forward, bringing a knee to slam into his chest before twisting an arm and sidestepping to avoid the other one. He nearly tripped up when one leg shot out from the forced crouch, but he was able to easily recover at the cost of having to back off for a moment. Shigaraki stood up with a grin. It seemed the villain had taken a liking to him, almost seeing him as interesting and useful, while still something he could ultimately look down upon easily enough. The two lunged together this time, Deku blocking a feigned blow, allowing Shigaraki to slip beneath his guard. He kicked out at the knees, connecting, but at the cost of his now extended and open legs. Knee. Based off the cringeworthy snap that sounded when his foot connected though, it was almost worth it. Both crashed to the ground, eyeing the other. You're getting to be really annoying, Canary. Well, I did say I would try not to be boring, so wouldn't it be fairer to say I kept my word rather than I'm annoying? He received only a glare in response, and then they lunged using their good leg. Deku ducked down instead of meeting him this time, pressing both hands on the other's middle and using his whole body to heave him up towards his companion, the teleportation quirk user. He immediately ducked into a roll as another villain attacked him from behind, leaving a cracked mark from where the incoming fist had connected with the ground. In hindsight, that wasn't such a good idea, but he really didn't expect the Void user to be able to keep such a close eye on their fight with how many attacks he was blocking the so-called cannon fodder, because some really had quite the reputations themselves. Shigaraki came shooting out from a portal behind him, knocking him firmly to the ground, and it was only his precaution of double hoodies that saved him. The upper one had crumbled to dust by the time he twisted around, getting his good leg up in time to shove him in the gut, using the opposite hand to shove his shoulder in the same direction and the remaining hand to pull his arm, redirecting it from his midsection. Just as he began pushing himself up, a loud clang resonated throughout the entire building, a matching splashy thunk signifying that yes, the entryway doors had in fact been blown off their hinges. Deku eyed Shigaraki, who was scratching his neck as he did the same. Deku knew his back was open to the new threat, but also had to worry if the villain was given the chance to get behind his back again. He was already down a jacket and a knee. The fight wasn't going as well as possible. Deku could really only comfort himself knowing that at least he kept them from freeing their helpers from the cement or joining in the fight. Because Deku knew despite his petulant attitude there was a certain cleverness behind it. It just wasn't often used, and he could understand that. At times he wished he could shut his own brain off and not wonder about intentions and personalities and the trillion of other things that swirled about his head, nearly driving him to tears if not insanity. He absently began muttering, "Don't worry, for I am here." The booming proclamation decided it for the two, both tearing their eyes away to stare at the number one hero in tandem. Deku tensed as the hero ignored his co-workers and shot towards them in one powerful bound. In a twist of what to Deku seemed to be irony at its highest, however, the pillar of peace, justice, and all that is good twisted direction slightly as he shot to them, and just like that Deku realized, barely too late to do anything, that the pro-hero wasn't aiming for Shigaraki. They were the target. He went to raise his arms in defense, but was clearly going to be too slow. Why was he even trying to block? He should have dashed. The world darkened around him, flinging him once more into a pain-filled but all the same empty abyss. Deku woke once more to a world filled with pain that was really starting to becoming a bit of a pattern, and he had to wonder how this had become his life. With a groan he rolled over, dragging himself up, ignoring the pain in the whole of their midsection and arms as they tried to find where they were, beyond that they were in a hospital room. Stupid, generic. They paused from trying to get their broken body to cooperate. They were in UA. It was the most likely solution anyway, as that was where they were last. The USJ, anyway, and whoever had him clearly saw him as an ally considering the lack of restraints or security. Heck, the window was left wide open. It clearly wasn't a hospital, as well as he could see the shapes of other beds and a desk through the thin curtains. The beds wouldn't be unusual for a hospital, except they were the wrong kind for any of the hospitals anywhere near the US. That was a whole other story. But the desk was an outlier. It meant he was at a school nurse's office. So he was at his old dream school, in the infirmary, and struggling to breathe, never mind leave. And oh hell, was that window tempting. He was fairly sure he'd be able to scale down it. As he thought it through, a person slid into the curtained area with him. They came around to his view when he tensed uncertainly. "You really shouldn't be moving so soon. Recovery girl says that no matter what she does, she can't heal your arms fully, it will scar, but there should be no additional issues after a few months." Deku smiles, faintly causing a disconcerted expression to flick onto Eraserhead's face. His eyes were wide with something like horror in them. Instead of pondering the meaning like he usually would, Deku focused on the reasoning for why they were like that. The one thing that made it into his pain-addled head and painkiller-addled. Why couldn't they just let one torture him? He didn't need both working to ruin him. I knew I should have dodged. But that also means I was able to block in time. That's good, I guess. Yeah, Eraserhead seemed thrown off by that, nodding his head slightly while speaking carefully as he parroted back the last words. Recovery girl said it would have been much worse, even fatal if you hadn't, so that's good. He'd have to think over what he was missing here later. Mind helping me stand up? I wouldn't want to take advantage of your hospitality any further. And knowing about Recovery girl, He'd be hard-pressed to get off the horrible painkillers. You really are something else, brat. You just got a full-powered hit from All Might, and that's what comes to mind. Oh god. Eraserhead seemed lost. Well, it's not like that was the worst blow I've been dealt. Deku grinned jokingly despite his mind drifting to the day that changed his fate. That was a wound no physical one could ever hope to surpass. Eraserhead just shook his head looking at him like he was crazy. Well, okay then, if you say so, little man, that's pretty hardcore though. Present Mike made an entrance as he burst through the curtain beside Eraserhead. Recovery girl should be here to check on you soon, and I have heard from your friend Tanaka that he has been keeping an eye on little Air for you. Anything I can get ya? You look like a wreck. Even worse than Mummy Man over here. Deku took a moment to scan over Eraserhead, who was indeed making for a surprisingly good imitation of a mummy, although he didn't seem to be too horribly injured beyond that, and remember no Nomu or Shigaraki fight this time for him since Izuku was keeping Shigaraki busy. Meanwhile, Eraserhead scowled his capture cloth, flipping out as he growled at the other who spent the whole lecture laughing his head off, even when he got a boot planted on his head. I don't know, Mr. Present Mike. 𝐻𝐼𝐴 looks pretty bad. Present Mike burst into laughter anew as Eraserhead stared at him. 𝐻𝐼𝐴. Do you think I won't get revenge for that just cause you're already injured? He was going to keep up the mummy man for far too long already. It wasn't shouted, but all the same the warning was clear. Deku didn't think he meant it all that much. Hopefully. You never could really tell with him. 𝐻𝐼𝐴. Present Mike shouted, well, not really for him, but for anyone else it would be between his cackles. Quit that. Ha 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 never ha. I know I've had to tell Yamada before not to cause a disturbance in my infirmary, but now it seems I have to tell you, Aizawa. Don't make me kick you out. My patient needs to rest. If he had reacted even a second later, or if he didn't get to me so soon, I dare say he might have died. Not even I am able to heal someone up so quickly that he can deal with all this chaos after only 3 days. 3 days? Recovery girl turned to him at his dismayed shout. Oh, I'm sorry, dear. I guess they didn't tell you yet, but yes, it's been dash. His admittedly fuzzy feeling head whirled at the confirmation, and he couldn't quite stop himself from breaking out into familiar muttering. Oh god, all the catch-up I'm going to have to play. 6 days. I haven't done anything in 6 days. I'm going to be so behind. Let's see, I should probably start with review, right? Thankfully he was cut off before he got too far. Don't worry, if you're worried about your schoolwork, I'm sure I can get you a note to excuse you from most assignments and for your absence for the past 4 days and a few more while you heal here. Thank you, Miss Recovery Girl, but that's not what I'm worried about. It's my extracurriculars, so I'm afraid that won't help all that much. If you could give me my phone though, there is someone I need to get in touch with. Oh. I'm so sorry, dearie. Your phone was completely smashed when you were hit. She trailed off when he snorted at her word choice. We have one here if you would like to use it. No thank you, I don't think they would pick up. Well shoot, he really was stuck here then. Although he honestly wouldn't mind all that much if it weren't for the fuzziness caused by the dose of whatever they gave him, he couldn't think straight. All right then, I'm going to heal you again now, so I expect you to go straight to sleep after taking this. She handed him a small round pill before quickly pressing a kiss to his cheek. Immediately the drowsiness grew, so he barely managed to take the pill, his vision swimming as he did, before fading off. The last sight he saw before he was fully gone was the 2 pro heroes' guilt-stricken and worried faces. They were placing responsibility for his injuries on themselves, it would seem, which wasn't really fair. The one person who was responsible for any injuries is the one who caused them. No one forced that person's hands unless someone did, then it was that person's fault, and by taking fault they were taking it from the one truly responsible. He had needed some time to truly learn that lesson himself, something that irked their mentor to no ends. But no, wait, it was an accident, so that doesn't really put full blame on them, right? Especially because he wasn't where he was supposed to be, and he couldn't think straight like this. Better, I suppose. You're doing well, Friday child. Deku lay on the ground. He was 12 now, a little over a year since they had saved him and almost 6 months since they had begun training him, yet he was still so far from even hoping to match them. What their mentor had, this was the sort of power that could make even All Might quail before them or hesitate. If All Might even stood a chance. And yet, Deku, the quirkless, useless child was the one they had chosen to help. It was odd but flattering. In a way it matched their mentor. They were never one to go anywhere near someone who might stand out more than them. They liked to always have the biggest target on their back of a group. Not anywhere near your level though. Yes, well I also needed time to learn. You'll get there in no time I'm sure. Where I'm from this sort of training is done since birth, so I have decades on you even if we're near the same technical age. You always say technical. Well, I've lived centuries or near that long I think, but something went wrong not too long ago and I don't remember anything. They gave a forlorn sigh. I wouldn't mind all that much if it didn't feel like I was missing a chunk of myself. Deku was intrigued. If anyone else had said that he would have laughed, but their mentor had that out of place, mystic way of carrying themselves sometimes when they didn't think anyone was looking. This was the first time they had mentioned it. How is that possible? I mean, if you had forgotten, then how could you know? And how could it be for centuries? Historians estimate the first quirk was seen just 53 years ago. I mean, sure, it feels like forever. Their mentor's head was thrown back in laughter. The historians are wrong. There have been quirks for centuries. They just went down before the believed first quirk due to governments and people acting themselves and other factors. People tend to never like what's different. That's not even looking at the mass erasure and censoring of data that plagues most records dated 100 years before the first quirk, or any further. And battles and disputes color the ones any further after that as well as right up to 40 years ago. But the quirk appearances are clear for anyone who knows what to look for. Either way though, only you would know the exact suspected year. Never change, will you? He watched them unamused as they perched on a tree branch upside, completely ignoring all the implications of what they said. Really? Really? As for how I know without memory would be my quirk. I have vague feelings memories before my and I've always had my quirk. They grinned down, or was it up, at their bare feet before landing easily on the ground, although I know for sure because of. Well, that is not important. Come on, you can't just leave it like that. Why are you so secretive about your quirk, though I'm sure it's amazing? The cultures in the group that truly introduced me to quirks was very secretive about quirks. It was treated as a private matter. I mean, you can't counter something you don't know. It really does make a paranoid amount of sense, doesn't it? It's really just habit anyway. My quirk's not all that good when it comes down to saving others. I had to work for that. Now up, you've had enough of a break, let's retry that last move. He groaned, ignoring the burning curiosity at all his unanswered questions, pushing his aching body back up from the ground, taking up the ready stance again as he prepared himself. He almost wished he wasn't stuck learning self-defense too. You are heartless, aren't you, Big brother? Big brother, come on, wake up, we're here to visit you. Jean said that it was really hard to arrange, so you gotta wake up and say hi. 𝐻𝐼D. What's going on? Deku's words were slurred as he struggled to regain consciousness. Whoa, Deki, did they drag you? Another voice joined the first. He really doesn't look good, does he? A third. The first seemed close. To tears, he struggled to raise a hand to pat their head. Why did he? Is Big Brother going to be all right? I'd been getting rumors that it was All Might who took him out. Apparently the league's boss was pretty put out about that, but I didn't expect it to be true. Oh God. Boss, how did we fail you like this? His slurred words of comfort, it's all right, were dissolved into a weird mix of noise. It's All Might. Did the boss just make a pun about this? Don't dash, the warning was ignored, because I'm pretty sure he said that it's Ayak. Deku couldn't fully follow the conversation of the shadows that surrounded his bed, but distantly he recognized he knew them. They were safe. Guys, grab him, we got to go and we can't just leave him here. I mean, who knows what they'll do to him? He's drugged as hell and like 5 seconds from death's door. A consensus was quickly reached and he felt himself being raised from the bed and gently placed in someone's arms. He barely felt himself being jostled. An unnatural and complete silence descended over him just as the door smacked open and a hoarse cry sounded out of wait. And then the quiet was all-consuming around them, and next Deku knew they were elsewhere with completely new sounds surrounding his kidnappers. He drifted off to sleep to the gentle whispers of whoever was holding him. He woke again from a peaceful, dreamless sleep, that part he was insanely grateful for, in the familiar spare room of Jin's bar. the first full moon. It refers to January's full moon, the wolf's/old full moon, sometimes called the spirit's moon, although everyone always called it moonshine bar. 𝐻𝐮 had given up long ago and had the nickname added underneath the original name, to 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's joy. Deku wasn't fully sure 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was innocent in the name change. 𝐻𝐮 would swear 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 was 100% guilty. As Deku quietly soaked in the familiar surroundings, he focused on his mind, finding to his relief that it wasn't foggy with drags despite the lack of pain. He vaguely recalled seeing the two somewhat familiar heroes and being woken. But why did he bother? His eyes lit on a brand new phone, the same style and version of his old one resting on the table. An upright card read, "Call me," in bright green writing shadowed in pink, near identical to the one by the bell in his own house. He groaned, going through his new phone checks for tracking and other less desirable things for an information gatherer, even if he knew he'd find nothing, before he dialed the lone number. "Hey there, 𝐻𝐮, miss me so much you had to kidnap me." "And how'd you know about that, 𝐷𝐿?" "Well, I definitely do now." "So cruel. Hold still, I'm headed up. It's 9 in the morning, so I have another hour before I open." "Need anything?" "No." "How long was I asleep?" "Well, about that. It's been a week. I'm really sorry to not ask you, but you were so out of it and you couldn't move or even recognize air or me. And oh God, 𝐷𝐿, the doctor we got you to said you were going to have permanent damage if not for his quirk and I'm so sorry, 𝐷. I failed you. I should have kept a better eye on the underground ongoings. I knew you needed a break. It's okay, 𝐻𝐮. Hey, there you are." Izuku gave 𝐻𝐮 his biggest smile as the other appeared in the doorway. The other rushed towards him, gently pulling him into a hug as they kneeled at the bedside. "We made sure to do better this time. You did nothing wrong. You had all my files sorted so that I could easily find what I needed, and wrote reports when you filled in for me, summarizing alongside the recordings. You even turned in some of the analysis when need be." 𝐻𝐮 was in tears now, "leading you straight off to run to your death. But I'm not dead. I'm right here. I'll always be here. Besides, if you place blame on anyone but the one who did it or coerce someone else to you, take it from the one responsible. Remember." Always quoting that mysterious mentor of yours. They laughed weakly. "That was a win, right? You know it. Between you and me, it's because I haven't learned it yet either. That'll be our secret then. Just wait until they show up." Deku spent the next while slumped in the pillows with 𝐻𝐮 nearby. He made a point about talking about the equivalent to them of nothing at all. It was worth every second as 𝐻𝐮 pulled himself together, looking like a weight and a half had left his shoulders. Finally the other spoke up. "We did make sure to keep on top of your stuff, although I doubt it was as well as you could have done, you know. I've seen the work you guys do when you put your heads together. You guys give the pros I'm up against a run for their money. We did learn from the best. Air is off with the Johnson sisters. Something about having a womanly presence in her life. Oh, God no, that's going to end in disaster, isn't it? 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and I have an ongoing bet on their girl time. So I'd say I absolutely agree." The two laughed together at the thought before 𝐻𝐮 continued. "I feel we should warn you, there's some heroes that have been poking around your building, so you need to be on the lookout if you want to go for a walk or something, and maybe ask me or one of the others to go along." "I'll be fine. Don't you need to open up for lunch right about now? Go, I won't be dying on you anytime soon." "You got it, 𝐷𝐿. Just call if you need anything." Deku watched him leave a small smile on his face. Looking at 𝐻𝐮, normally one wouldn't guess that he was actually still 17, making the bar very much illegal. He'd had an early growth spurt when his quirk grew in and ever since had stayed far on the tall side, his hair growing steadily more pale until it went completely white on his 15th birthday, over a year after Deku had met him. 𝐻𝐮 had actually been the first friend he'd made him once he'd left his mentor at 12, after a year and a half spent with them. Of course it came as a surprise to him when he found out that the other was almost 14, not the 20-something he'd guessed that the other was. Deku leaned back in the bed, pulling the phone out again to begin hooking up his accounts and syncing the information to his other phones. Even he would admit at times he might have too many, despite making sure that they were 100% secure that connected up. Next time 𝐻𝐮 checked up on him, he would ask for a computer so he could really get to work. He had far too much catch-up to play. Interestingly enough, there wasn't much on the internet about the idolized #1 pro hero attacking an innocent, accidental though it was, so that meant the Hero Association and UA was covering this up, And since he had yet to hear so much as a whisper about this, that also meant the League of Villains had nothing on the PR front, and oh god, that hurt. There was so much potential to turn people's eyes for even an amateur. What were they doing? Well, what were they doing besides everything wrong? He hated it when others did his job wrong or ignored the importance the right info had completely. Of course, not leaking any info about the pro-hero's blunder could be a tactical move. But they probably just really 𝐂𝐮𝐿 at it. Deku knew he shouldn't be mentally correcting the villain's PR skills of all things, but seeing anyone mess up this badly gave him second-hand embarrassment, especially when it was in his realm of expertise. It almost made him want to give them a hand at it. He wouldn't, and even if he did, which he wouldn't of course no matter how tempting, he would of course put the movement down at the same time as he built it up until it had been completely crushed. The temptation was definitely there. But he wouldn't. He switched from the news feeds to flick absently through his emails now to hopefully tame the temptation somewhat. It didn't matter, he would never betray his ideals. Sometimes he just couldn't stand it. Maybe that was the issue. He knew when he was younger the very thought would have horrified him, yet here he was years later towing the line and wondering how far he could let himself go across it. He had ditched his dreams of heroism long ago, replacing them with the hope of helping through his information dealership. And through it all, 9 times out of 10, it felt that meant neither side would ever trust him despite his strict rules on which side he would play on. The people's, he would always try and help as many innocents as he could with his info. He thought back to 𝐂𝐮𝐿 and his sidekick's instant suspicion. That hadn't been the first nor last time the heroes he was helping quickly assumed the worst of him. It had happened again and again and again. It got tiring. Non-stop accusations of villainy, vigilantism. He had a license for his non-existent quirk. Damn it, what more did they want? And a slew of other falsehoods worked very quickly to erode any fantasies of partnership, teamwork, or even a polite working environment. It was like the heroes believed because he offered his assistance, he was working for them. As if he wasn't working with them. As if he wasn't offering priceless, correct information and advice for less than they could get unreliable, and notably less, worse information. Deku worked hard to ensure he always offered quantity, quality, and a guarantee of alliance for every job, yet all the same he could count on one hand the number of heroes he had officially worked with who hadn't accused him of something within a month of meeting him. And he would still have leftover fingers. And even after the accusations, and sometimes arrests or attacks, had been proven totally unwarranted, the suspicions and accusations continued in almost every single case he worked on that lasted over 2 information drops. He quickly adapted and learned how to get info even quicker to minimize them, but there was only so much he could do. That was part of the reason he hoped not to ever work with Present Mike or Eraserhead. He had really started liking them. And Air had gotten attached to them as well. He'd hate for any distrust in him to transfer over to her. He wouldn't be able to stand it if he was the cause of her unhappiness. Deku let his strain of thought drift into silence as he finished with the final piece of correspondence he had. That was the great thing. Most of his dealings were done in person, so there was no electronic record. Although he did have some regular citizens that came to him for proof in civil cases or about their child's or spouse's whereabouts. He had even gotten a few about missing pets. That was actually the category his favorite case fell into. He had been asked to find someone's bee colony, and as odd as that was, the case ended up being hilarious and light-hearted despite the owner's notable distress throughout it. It had ended well, so in the end even they had gotten a laugh out of it. Big brother. Air made her entrance then, rushing through the door to jump onto the foot of the bed. You're all better. Yes, sorry for worrying you so much. He held up his arms for a hug and she leapt into them, making him discreetly hide a wince. He still hurt from his injuries and his new skin from the burns was extremely sensitive still. He wouldn't worry her about that though. It's okay, but you're not allowed to do that again. Okay, I'll be sure not to worry you so much again. No. Air pouted adorably, pulling out of the hug to gaze up into his eyes with her tear-filled puppy eyes. You're not allowed to get hurt so badly anymore. Life is unpredictable. I told you I would do my best to never make a promise I couldn't keep. I didn't see this attack coming and I might miss things or mess up again. But I'll tell you what, I'll do my best and be extra careful not to get injured that badly again, and I'll be doubly sure to take all possible precautions. Got it? Deku looked at her woe-begotten face and found himself conceding to more before he could think it completely through. That's a promise, 𝐻𝐮𝐬𝐴. She glanced up. And if for some reason I get really badly injured again, then I will let it be your choice if I give up being an information broker and be something far safer or continue. 𝐻𝐮 eyes him as if weighing how honest he was being. If I agree and you get hurt again, if I let you continue then I still get the choice if it happens for a third time. And this deal counts for anything more serious than a broken bone. Deal. Deku couldn't fight the grin that formed all the while knowing he had been played like a fiddle. He had taught her so well. It took a number of promises and reassurances to the rest of the group before any of them had let him return to his building, safely covered by his mask and jacket with 𝐻𝐮 by his side. Or rather, sitting happily on 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫's shoulders chatting about the drawing she was making and how it was going to be the bestest, yet leading her to begin describing all her other works of art. That was fine with 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, who was the type to take contentment from others' presence even if he himself remained silent. It helped that he had an interest in arts and crafts as well as design, owning a small arts and crafts store and teaching classes. Deku smiled at the two of them as he watched them from the corner of his eye. He was leaning slightly on 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, tired despite how short the walk was. He definitely wasn't healed all the way yet. Distantly he wondered if anything besides the scars that laced his arms were permanent, and the hidden irony that situation could contain. In the end it didn't matter though. He had time to heal and enough work to keep him busy while cooped up. He had been back for all of a day before Present Mic and Eraserhead had come barreling in, Present Mic insisting on getting some form of contact with him, as the two friends came to check in on him. Apparently they had worried that he had been kidnapped by the League, as the teacher had seen a group take him in his sleep. They didn't say who or why the teacher had been there in the middle of the night, just it wasn't them. That visit had gone smoothly enough and 𝐻𝐮 had been happy to see the heroes again after so long. Although she had tried to pry who had been responsible for it from them, his friends had agreed he would be the one to tell her if he chose to, and only said that battles were unpredictable and he'd walked into one in order to save young heroes from very bad people. One look from Deku had turned their mildly bewildered looks into knowing ones and ensured they kept it from her without being too obvious about it. They weren't the current issue he was struggling with though. No, I won't be able to help you. Deku reiterated at their silence in case the first refusal had not been clear enough. If you would like, there are quite a few others who I am sure would be more than willing. How about I get you in touch with one of them? It had taken the UA a week to officially visit him, an ambassador sent by the principal, not to apologize for the mix-up, thank him for his help, or even offer him hush money, all of which he would have greatly preferred to this. The principal had the sheer nerve to send some lackey to him to convince him to join the UA and be under All Might's tutelage in disguise, putting himself in an extremely risky position considering recent event, as no disguise was perfect. The flaws of the offered plan were many and glaringly obvious. He could be recognized from the run-in at the 𝐻𝐮𝐵AD, or just the fact it's a disguise be realized even worse, or any other of the many horrible possibilities. Practically a full section of dumb ways informants are caught should be dedicated to disguising oneself and going undercover. It was basically rule number 3, if you are already known by face by them, don't. Simple disguises are usually best, but if you can be recognized. Anyway it went, none of the endings seemed good. Adding to the risk was how recent the attack had been, creating automatic suspicion of outsiders and raising awareness and caution. And he'd already seen All Might's punch first ask questions never method. Admittedly a fairly good method, but that didn't exactly put him in an ideal situation. Should he accept, the danger would of course increase as his quirk was fully imaginary. Of course the principal didn't know that, but there weren't exactly many purely internal, mental quirks in 1A or hero courses for a reason. 𝐴 was the notable exception to that, having a quirk that was both mentally based and internal, but his had the benefit of acting based off a person, so it wasn't completely an internalized quirk. Of course all of that wasn't dangerous enough. UA was plus ultra after all. They were also asking him to approach his accidental almost killer and help him deal with the guilt that came with near fatally attacking an ally, as the pro-hero was spiraling as they struggled with the realization. Plus ultra, right? Honestly, it wasn't that he didn't want to help the hero out. No matter his grudge, he really did want to help them. Just 𝐻𝐮𝐴𝐫 didn't plan on explaining to All Might who he was, so how did he explain it? His knowledge of the event as it wasn't public knowledge. B. Why he was bothering the hero about it and bringing it up, and C. Why his opinion even mattered on this. If that was his sole objective, it would be more doable, but with hunting out Yue's spies while undercover and keeping up his normal actions as Deku, it became difficult. It's an amazing deal. Double your usual rate when you ask for hourly pay, plus you get automatic admittance to the #1 Hero Academy. And I don't think I've mentioned it yet, but food and board is included as you'll be housed in the brand new student dorms. They trailed off temptingly. Deku nearly throttled the other, maintaining the disguise 24/7. Were they insane? Outwardly he smiled patiently. Not really. When offering a deal like this, you need to look at someone's values, Mr. Vlad King, and you see I don't do this for money or my rates would be far higher. I'm the best. Why do you think what I charge is always the lowest? And I have no interest in being a hero, so UA is useless to me. But having gone there will lower suspicions for many of the heroes you work with. We have seen the list of charges that have been thrown at you, but we also know there has been no record of working for wrongdoers. Vlad King countered calmly. The days where I thought heroes wouldn't think the worst of me have long since become a distant memory. It truly doesn't bother me. I doubt that. Everyone wants to be trusted. I am, or else my info wouldn't be in such demand. I really hate to do this to you. You seem like a nice kid, but I was told to do whatever it takes, and you does hold a certain influence over heroes. If rumors began to spread. Blackmail, so classy and heroic, Mr. Vlad King. Here's the thing though, heroes make up a very small amount of my income, and I do things besides information gathering on top of that. Businesses paid far better, and he had a large clientele of citizens, plus all his information gathering matched very well with stocks, and that was ignoring his other money-earning ventures that he had undertook completely. But here's the thing, I won't deal with hero organizations like UA. If Principal 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴 would like me on his staff or as a fake student, he can come here and speak with me himself if he even wants me to consider. But his odds aren't all that much better. Now if you'll excuse me, Mr. Vlad King, I am a very busy person. Wait. Vlad King was half standing, his arm outreached as if to physically stop him as he rose from his chair. We're at a loss. No one has even the slightest clue who might have known about where Class 1A was going ahead of time and could be the traitor. All the students were given thorough background exams and questioned afterwards, and we weren't even able to get a student to admit their friend was acting weird. And while yes, everyone was separated, but it was into groups. And even the teachers are turning on each other. We're really not sure. Even the principal has no clue what do. Deku sighed in defeat. I could make an exception. But if I am to help, I'll need access to information. Vlad King seemed relieved he wasn't just denying anymore. That's fine. Sensitive information, not just your students' names, or even their records. I'll need to know the complete security system for USJ and UA. My help will give you guys direction, but I can't just be kept in the dark. And I will find out if you try. I won't work for you. I work with heroes, and I'll consider for UA, but I have conditions. Vlad King seemed a lot more worried, but he still smiled happily. All right, give me a list of your demands to work with us and I'll give it to Principal 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐴. I haven't agreed yet, Deku warned. The hidden door banged open behind his desk, causing Vlad King to startle. Wait. Air, what are you? If you're going to be going to UA, I'm going too. But, I know it'll be dangerous, but I can take care of myself. I'm almost 6, and we're family. Anywhere you go, I'm going to. You can't just leave me here. Deku sighed. Air knew all his weaknesses, and when it came to her, they were many. Fine, one of my demands will be she comes with me. Vlad King still seemed startled. All right, I'll make sure that can happen. Air grinned satisfied before rushing over to hide behind Deku, throwing her arms over his shoulders as he was sitting down in a foldable chair across from the hero. And she is your sister. This is Air, my younger sister. Air paused, looking the guest over carefully before naming the hero. And he is Vlad King. Quirk BLD control, no wife or roommates, one pet, a bulldog. Civilian name, 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, right? Vlad King paused, surprised. That's right, I guess I should expect as much considering he is your brother. I can see the resemblance. Hisashi, present Mike, showed me a photo of Deku when I said I needed to make a deal with your brother. You have the same smiles. Do you plan on following in his footsteps? Air grinned at the comparison and then paused in thought. I don't really know what I'm going to do. And you have plenty of time to decide. Deku added before turning his attention back to Vlad King. I'll be sure to send a list of demands to you. Now I really must be going. Deku mentally sighed for what felt like the zillionth time that meeting. His mentor was going to kill him for agreeing to this when they found out. Rule number 2, don't do anything stupid. Enough to badly put yourself at risk without an out and a good reason. There was no way to describe the plan, but putting himself stupidly at risk on all counts with no escape route and a semi-acceptable, at best, reason. He very much doubted UA couldn't find out their spies if they really needed to. He'd be surrounded by unknown enemies now and trying to find the one most likely to kill him, which would involve a certain level of separation from his classmates and association with potential in villainy, which would make him even more suspicious. Perfect. Knowing pushing any further wouldn't do him any good, Vlad King rose and bid them both goodbye for then and exited the building. He paused to glance back at the building, which looked as dumpy as Present Mike had described it to him, a decrepit thing that seemed even shadier than the two equally run-down buildings it was squished between. As he watched, a head of tangled bluish-gray hair peeked between the ragged blinds covering the small top window. The face was covered and they wore a loose black shirt, a hand over one face. Shigaraki Tamura. His mind instantly raced. Was he with the League? Vlad thought back to how far the other had pushed for information. He had written it off before. Curiosity had to be a requirement for anyone who actually enjoyed that job, right? But years of knowing Eraserhead proved that wrong now that he thought about it. Why hadn't he realized that before? The quirk was supposedly purely an internally oriented mental quirk, but what if? And how had he known about the attack? Their informants and underground heroes hadn't heard even a whisper of it. He had arrived pretty late too. And wasn't Deku the one that Endeavor had attacked? Had Endeavor known? They were being played. Vlad King rushed back into the building, making it to the entryway before pausing as he realized how wrong he'd been. Did you need something? Lounging on the couch he had just vacated was the person he had just seen. The bluish-gray shaggy hair still hung about his face, and his clothes hung limply off his too thin form, which was different, creepier really than Shigaraki's now that he got a good look. What he now realized as an attached hand was partially obscuring the man's face, only to move as they looked up at their entrance. Darkly tinted sunglasses fell back from above the hand, covering his eyes before Vlad King could see them. Air was gone again, but Deku sat at ease in the chair still. He held a file in his hands. Vlad King, hello again. Did you forget something? Sorry, I thought. Never mind, excuse me. His eyes drifted back to the not quite look-alike that seemed to be observing him from behind the glasses. You see what I mean now though, right, Mr. Vlad King? You see me as in the gray area, not with the heroes, but playing both sides willy-nilly to come out on top. You aren't wrong. I haven't been on the heroes' side since I was a child. I do whatever I can to help keep everyone safe. If UA or its principal goes against that or seeks to, I will get in your way. Feel free to tell him that too. Right. Vlad King made a hasty exit. Deku turned his head back to Jean, who had slumped forward again with a half-groan, half-laugh from silently watching the exchange, pushing his sunglasses up as his hand came to rest over his eyes again. See what I mean? Even the teachers are jumpier than usual. Imagine the untrained and traumatized students. If this doesn't kill me. Air chose that moment to return and leap onto the couch next to Jean, having retrieved the picture she had made for Jean. Deku watched Jean, over the drawing, both of them dropping the subject at her entrance. It would seem he would be going to UA after all. That one meeting was what had led Deku to where he was now. Standing in uniform, he'd forgotten how stiff and itchy new uniforms were before the very school he would have died to go to just a mere handful of years ago. He felt no excitement now, even though he had the first time when Mike had invited him, just exhaustion. What had possessed him to agree to this? Come on, big brother, you're going to be late if you just stand there. And we haven't even seen the dorm yet. Deku smiled down at his little sister, who now had gray hair that was streaked with a pretty light red mixing with a few also dyed silvery white strands beside it. He had styled it into easy pigtails so it didn't get in her way. A second horn now sat opposite her real one, and the unnaturally pointy teeth that now filled her mouth flashed with her wide, happy smile. Deku's hair was styled similarly, being gray but with the twining red and white only touching the tips of his hair. The sharpness of his teeth were even more pronounced and all of his freckles were covered up. Twisting horns that, while similar to 𝐻𝐻𝐿 in coloring, were much bigger, going slightly up and then back from his forehead before curling outwards slightly and down. All the changes would hold permanent until 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 consciously released the illusions. It was amazing how well 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 and Suzy's quirks worked together, her quirk boost move allowing his illusions to become tangible and be seen on cameras. The downside, however, was they would barely be able to use their quirks while the illusions on him and Eri were active. It was a steep price, but neither were highly reliant on their quirks and had volunteered for the task when they had heard of his plan to go undercover. Of course, that still left the issue of his non-existent quirk. Sure, he could probably take all his new classmates despite not having one, but that was just yet another red flag to join the plethora he would already raise, so he had to create one to make him fit in amongst the hero students, but at the same time couldn't be tested. And so, Time Out was created. Using this new fake quirk, he could pause time at will, but only for so long, the catch of course being that even he couldn't move when time was paused, although he still retained consciousness, allowing him a timeout of sorts where he could brainstorm counters and the best move to make. While it was completely fake, it was also difficult to test and would explain away his planning and fighting skills without drawing suspicion as long as he toned down the level of his technique. The next issue was names. Deku kept the Kobayashi part as it was such a common name and they both would easily respond to it. From there Air became Aries, like the constellations, and he settled on Hideki. And Hideki, as previously said in the intermission, is a male Japanese name, created from meaning excellent, outstanding, or meaning excellent, fine, combined with ki meaning tree. And in case you can't tell, all knowledge on the name Hideki came from the internet. The siblings reached their new dorm building only a few minutes before first PRD began, so it was empty as Air excitedly pressed the entry card that hung on a lanyard with their room key next to it onto the scanner and bounced in full of cheerful nervousness. Deku followed, hauling their bags with him at a much more sedate pace. They had plenty of time to unpack and get ready as they were expected only for afternoon classes today. This gave the teacher time to warn Class 1A of the new student as well as make sure they had time to settle into their room before they were swarmed with people. From tomorrow onwards, Deku would attend the morning classes too, while Air would have the mornings to herself, although she had to keep up with her online schooling. He would be allowed to get her for the hero classes in the afternoon during lunch break so she didn't spend all day alone. He didn't trust all of the teachers to keep an eye on her. The two spent the morning joking around and enjoying their last moments of true freedom for the foreseeable future behind closed doors in their dorm room after doing a thorough triple checking of it for bugs or any other form of surveillance. In truth, it wasn't too different from their old bedroom, although everything there was bigger than their new arrangements. They had 2 beds and a desk with a bathroom and closet branching off. Of course, they no longer had the small kitchen or living room, but technically that was downstairs. The principal of UA was kind enough to have the room painted before they arrived. Air still hated waking up to white walls, so the walls were the agreed-upon color of pastel pink. They had covered the hard floor between their beds with a circular pastel green rug and added matching green curtains to the windows. Air's bed was covered in a comfortable yellow comforter and covered in throw pillows and stuffed animals, while Izuku's was in a muted dark blue with a small green lamb, given to him by Air from the time she spent with the Johnson sisters, and a larger pale blue dragon with a collar reading, "Don't forget the little guys, your guardian spirits." That one was a gift from the group. They had, with great ceremony, presented it to him when he had been leaving that morning. Of course, the effect was ruined when all but Jean and 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 burst out laughing or into snickers. Even those two soon followed despite trying to push down their chuckles. Apparently, he could add it into his tragic backstory. Knuckleheads. He knew it was just their way of saying they were still there for him. For his part, he'd given them all burner phones with his new number programmed in and promised to keep it on. He did still have 3 of his actual phones with him though. They had split the closet so they each got a side as well as half the sink area with a shared stack of colorful towels on a chair. They had added a deadbolt as well, although adding a second key lock was more than a little tempting. Deku stored all the files he had brought safely either in a trunk under the bed hidden under spare blankets, clothes, and other odds and ends, or by the hamper in a moving box nearly buried under a pile of shoes in the closet. Both places were kept discreetly locked and neither held too important or damning information. Arranged neatly on the desk there were a few figurines of heroes. 𝐬𝐮𝐬 had picked a few of her favorites for decorations when they went shopping for their dorm supplies, beside binders and books for both their classes, as well as writing utensils and other small miscellaneous items that they might need. 𝐬𝐮's sticker-covered laptop rested in the center while Deku's remained on his bed with a few small bags. 𝐬𝐮 left her art supplies kit well-stocked and organized, oversized, backpack the 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 had filled to the very brim for her before they left, and favorite satchel on the bed laying beside her watch. Deku likewise now had a backpack, although it remained empty sans a handful of pens, pencils, a notebook, and a binder. "Alright, explorer, 𝐬𝐮." Deku straightened to hold all the poise of natural-born authority as he spoke playfully. "Are you prepared for your first contact with the unknown beings referred to as Class 1A? She saluted, grinning as she grabbed her watch and shoulder bag that held the new sketchbook. Too many people had seen her old one, and a pack of crayons, a few pencils, and an eraser, as well as her phone and cat headphones. She deliberated carefully before selecting a small tuxedo cat stuffed animal whose ears matched the ones on the headphones to his amusement to join her. "All ready. Onwards," Deku regally declared, slinging his backpack on and leading the match out as air dissolved into giggles behind him. They would be missing lunch, so Deku came prepared with granola bars, trail mix, and a small variety of fruits for 𝐬𝐮, handing one to her and shoving the rest unceremoniously into his bag in case she wanted them later, and locked the door behind them. Now feeling as prepared as he could be, Deku grabbed her hand and the two began making their way across the campus to the training grounds. They made it early as Deku had memorized the layout of the school, another red flag for the students, so he wouldn't of course tell anyone that, and they had left just a few minutes after lunch began to once more avoid other students. Deku knew he was putting it off since it had been a while since he had to rely on such a large variable as 19 different teenagers' moods and a apparently guilt-stricken teacher. Plus there was the worry that came from Eraserhead's reaction because, as he found out this morning, the underground hero hadn't been told yet, and wouldn't until tomorrow afternoon. So make that 2 teachers. He didn't know why he agreed to this. It was a bigger disaster than the non-existent PR division of the League of Villains. Because yes, of course that was still bugging him. Weren't they like a revolutionary group? What were they doing? Everything wrong. That's what, if they would just think of all the advantages they had going on. It wasn't long before the first classmate filed into the room, causing Izuku to place one hand on top of 𝐬𝐮's head to gain her attention from where she had been doodling. Hello. Deku made sure he sounded nervous, but just first in the middle of the year nervous, not mouse why pushover nervous. He'd be keeping up the persona 24/7 after all. It should be similar to his own attitude, and he knew he couldn't put himself in that position again. Never again. "You're part of Class 1A, right? The hero course?" The student jumped slightly, having not seen him before. Deku offered a nervous smile at the prolonged silence, and one hand absently began fidgeting. The student, a girl with long pulled-back black hair and matching black eyes, stared before seeming to blink a few times to pull herself back into the present. Then she offered a kind enough smile. "Oh, you must be the new student, Kobayashi Hideki. It's nice to meet you. I am Yaoyorozu Momo." Her eyes drifted to 𝐬𝐮. "It's nice to meet you too." He made a bit of a point of blatantly following her gaze, though not too obviously. "This is my younger sister. Her name is 𝐬𝐮." He slid one of her earphones gently off her ear as she had taken note, and then returned to her art before Deku got his new classmate's attention. "𝐬𝐮, want to say hello?" 𝐬𝐮 looked up, one hand reaching up to grab a hold of his hoodie. He was pretty sure it was mostly an act, but she was sometimes still shy about speaking to strangers. "Hello, I'm Kobayashi 𝐬𝐮. It's nice to meet you." "It's nice to meet you too," Yaoyorozu replied unsurely. As the headphone covered up 𝐬𝐮's ears again and she returned to her work, he continued, although she could still hear them speaking, but Yaoyorozu didn't know that. It would help if she thought it was still a sensitive subject. "I'm the only family she has left, and she is my only family too, so I couldn't just send her off to an orphanage." He paused, gathering himself. Well, Yue was kind enough to let her stay in the dorms with me as long as she did well with online school and she would be able to join us to watch the afternoon classes, so I didn't just leave her alone all day. I hope it's not too big a bother. He ended quickly, speeding up his speech and giving a small bow as he concluded. No, not at all. The only socially acceptable response really. I'm sure some of the students will really love having her around. Deku, or rather Hideki, smiled his relief. That's great. I'd do anything for three. I wasn't quite sure what I would do. It's fine dash. Oh my gosh, Momo, who's the little girl? Is she our new classmate? I thought they were a guy. She's adorable. Hideki made a point of glancing around briefly before double-taking at the pale gloves that floated in the air. Another girl, this one much calmer, followed her, 2 earphone jacks hanging from her ears. That would be me. I'm Kobayashi Hideki. This is my little sister Kobayashi Aries. Oh my gosh, she's adorable. Deku silently noted that this one didn't question why a younger sibling would be tagging along. Thank you, Deku. No, Hideki glanced down at his sister before shrugging helplessly. I don't think I should interrupt her again so soon. She's still a bit tired from moving all our stuff to the dorms, but I'm sure she'll love the compliment. I'm 𝗧𝗓𝗃 by the way. The calmer girl introduced herself after observing them silently. She had dark hair and seemed a bit shorter than the other two. It was a bit hard to say though, as one was invisible. Kobayashi Hideki, it's nice to meet you. Yeah, same. Bit by bit the other students trickled into the room, some in groups, others by themselves. One in the latter category was a round-faced girl with rosy cheeks and short brown hair who smiled over at him and waved, although she also did a double take at his sister. He returned it with his own smile. Faintly Hideki heard the bell ring signaling classes start as the door banged open violently, causing everyone to jump before calming as, apparently, the last of their classmates literally skidded into the room. The engines on his legs smoking. Has anyone seen the new student Kobayashi? The dark-haired boy, who judging with appearances alone and the disapproving look he sent some students with imperfect uniforms was very rule-oriented, announced to the room, one hand fixing his glasses. I took it on myself to direct him here, but I could not find him at the dorms or the classroom. It would not do for him to be late for his first class. That would be me. Hideki took a firm step forward from the side wall. Air was sitting with her back too. I didn't think anyone would be looking for me, so I left with plenty of time to find the place. Thankfully there were a few maps around campus. Thank you for the effort though. That's great of you to take the initiative. I am 𝐻𝐿𝐻𝐿, the class representative. Feel free to come to me with any questions. It's nice to meet you and thank you. 𝐻𝐿𝐻 nodded once, glancing around the room before frowning as his eyes landed on Air. No, Aries. I was not aware we were expecting 2 new students. We aren't. Hideki mentally prepared himself as Eraserhead shuffled into the room, sliding the door shut behind him. That is Kobayashi Aries. The school agreed to keep them together as of recently Kobayashi Hideki is her only family left, but he would have to stay in the dorms in order to attend. The class turned wide eyes on the duo as Yaoyorozu nodded sadly. As she is 6, she'll be taking online school, but she can observe the afternoon classes, so she's not alone all day. He paused to harshly eye at Hideki. As long as she does not distract the class. Yes, sir. Hideki watched as Eraserhead carefully went to a corner of the room, pulling out a bright yellow sleeping bag. He kept the 2 in his sight at all times. He was already suspicious of them then, or at least that something was up. All Might should be here shortly. Do whatever till then. Saying All Might arrived along shortly wasn't quite correct. It wasn't even a mild understatement of the time. A full 30 minutes later he finally arrived, rushing into the room with a wide fake smile. Absently he wondered if that was a recent development or if he was only realizing it just now because of this up-close view. Behind those warm, determined eyes and large, welcoming smile was a nervousness, self-hatred, and regret he hadn't expected to see there. Fear not, students, I am here. Even Aries looked up at his entrance, narrowing her eyes as she took him in before glancing up at Izuku. She looked back down at her art before flipping the page with a determined look. Glancing at it, Hideki was somewhat relieved that it wasn't anything bad about All Might, instead something that began to look sort of like Eraserhead. Although now he had to wonder what that narrow-eyed look was for. Hideki returned to his first train of thought upon the hero's entry, noticing the tired look he tried to hide beneath his smile and the sloppily hidden shadows under his eyes. How he didn't directly look at anyone, and the almost hunted hunch to his shoulders. His eyes held a hidden pain and guilt. And looking at them right then he knew he had to do something if the opportunity arose, or to make one when this undercover task was over. After all, he became what he was to help others. He couldn't let himself become a source of pain. So in the back of his mind he began his plotting. It turned out that the almighty All Might, pun of course, intended could not teach to save his life. A few minutes into his rambling description of the exercise and all the students looked as lost and resigned as he did. How the heck were they training if this was class anyway? After the hero was finished he was called up to introduce himself to the rest of the class. And wasn't that an unwelcome surprise? Did they really still make kids go through that in high school? He kept his introduction short, but friendly, not curt, just private, or at least he tried to. Hello, my name is Kobayashi Hideki, and I am 14 years old. I ended up transferring into the school for family reasons that I honestly prefer not to go into now since it is still such a recent thing. Since the school was kind enough to let my sister, Kobayashi Aries, join me in the dorms, she'll be joining us for the afternoon classes, but not participating. She's just 6 years old and really shy sometimes, so please be patient with her. Thank you, and I look forward to working with you all. He bowed slightly in greeting only for one student to shout out, "Hey, what's your quirk then?" Oh. He jerked his head up trying to catch which one it was. He may know their names, records, personalities, and other miscellaneous information, but reliable audio was hard to come by. Sorry, I completely forgot. My quirk is called timeout. It allows me to freeze time temporarily, allowing me time to strategize, but I can't move during that time either. It took a few minutes of questioning before training was underway. Each student would be assigned a random opponent and each pair a biome. Like at the USJ, there would be a wide variety and they would have to use their surroundings to their advantage, only they would be fighting one-on-one. Hideki internally grinned. This he could do no problem. In order to set a good impression and the trap for the spy, he would have to make sure he was seen as strong, just not suspiciously strong. That would be the challenge. It did not take long for Aries to abandon her artwork behind and then the wall as she gradually began migrating towards the viewing screen to watch the fights. It didn't take long after that before she had moved to stand at the very front, childishly cheering both sides on and gasping or jumping as she watched the fights. As each of the students came back she offered them a shy grin and thumbs up, her eyes sparkling in excitement, although she still stuck by Hideki's side, tugging him along by a sleeve as she went. When Hideki's name was finally pulled, his partner for the exercise was one 𝐀𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, a boy with a crow-like head and a small shadow-like version of himself that he could just barely see peeking out from underneath the dark cloak of the other's hero costume. Vaguely Hideki found himself wishing he had a hero costume already instead of the leotard-like P uniform he was stuck wearing. Or a taser would be good just about now, any weapon at all would be, actually. The arena that was drawn for them was a dark-looking boarded-up apartment building, where the shadow would likely operate easiest, considering it stayed covered by the cloak that accompanied the boy's hero costume. Unless he entered a shadowy area, it was unlikely that the quirk enjoyed the sun. The rest of the students watched him with undisguised curiosity as he left Aries' side, gently taping her shoulder to make her aware of that, and approached the door and his opponent. "Let's hope for a good match, right, Kobayashi?" "Yes, good luck to you too." Hideki smiled slightly before rushing into the building when start was called. Like with the other students, one would be let in first. Hideki managed to be lucky in this at least, so he would have a 2-minute head start inside the building. His plan was simple, to keep going up until he found the lightest area possible and then whack the other with whatever he could find nearby. Probably. That wouldn't go over too well though. He was still racing to the top. And look at him being a good little hero in training. He wasn't even booby trapping anything like his instincts were screaming at him to do. He wasn't bad at combat, sure, but in the end he wasn't a fighter. He was an informant and traps and tricks were a large part of his trade. Hideki successfully made it up 3 flights of the broken-up stairs before a swoosh alerted him to an oncoming attack. Quickly he leapt up, grabbing onto the next level's banister and pulled himself up to dodge the blow. Dark Shadow followed him after it recovered, shooting up behind him while 𝗀𝐻𝐻𝐼 remained a flight or two below still. Perfect. This time, instead of dodging the enormous and semi-terrifying shadow bird, he planted his hands on its oncoming head, pushing himself up and over the attack while pressing its head into the ground with his intentionally heavy landing, digging his boots into the back of its head as he stood, unbending his knees from the landing. As he did this, one foot slid so it was now positioned to brace the head steady. Now in ready position, in one smooth motion he yanked upward on the body, not the neck, of course, because that would look horrible to the observers, and just what if? The tug dragged 𝗀𝐻𝐻𝐼 up and over the railing. He paused for a millisecond to decide the least technical approach as his opponent flew head first over him and heading towards the wall before deciding on a nice, good old-fashioned roundhouse kick to the gut. Dark Shadow had recovered at that point and shot forward to intercept, managing to absorb the blunt of the blow. They were not in time to stop the other from crashing rather painfully into the wall, however. "You are not bad at all, Kobayashi. I seem to have underestimated you," 𝗀𝐻𝐻𝐼 said, pulling himself up. "You're decent yourself." Hideki winced sharply at the landing, but all the same gave a good-natured grin and a nod. It was crucial after all that he not attack while the other was down, much less trying to talk to him, unless 𝗀𝐻𝐻𝐼 did first. The two stood there for a moment before Dark Shadow lunged again. Hideki leaped back, hopping up a few steps, and 𝗀𝐻𝐻𝐼 gave chase. Then as he quickly began to catch up, Hideki pulled himself over the railing and dropped. Of course he didn't really, landing correctly after falling so far took training after all, training he wasn't supposed to have. Instead he leapt over the railing, letting go long enough to establish his grip to below the stairs, bracing himself underneath where 𝗀𝐻𝐻𝐼 stood. Not too tricky. Probably, and by making sure he did it in large, straightforward, blocky steps, a large amount of credit would fall to his quirk, giving some proof to its existence. 𝗀𝐻𝐻𝐼 rushed to the railing as what happened slowly processed, staring down the small opening between the levels of staircases that slowly faded to the darkness of the basement. 𝗀𝐻𝐻𝐼 shifted nervously a bit before he too jumped, Dark Shadow slowing his fall. It was quite nice to hang there and see the shock flash across his face as 𝗀𝐻𝐻𝐼 saw him, but was unable to slow the descent and so kept falling. Hideki pulled himself back up quickly, knowing he had only bought himself so long, and continued his path to the rooftop. It turned out in a slightly unwelcome turn of events that there wasn't a roof on this building, only an attic, which thankfully had large windows, with a slanting roof. Hideki quickly climbed up into the rafters, blinking the sudden light from his eyes as he went. The corridors had been as dark as the name, boarded-up, multi-story complex building promised. Nicely situated in the rafters now, he slid off one shoe and let it loudly drop to the floor. A few more minutes of silence, and then the other followed. This time, however, he lowered it by the combined shoelaces of both shoes so it would be quieter. He hadn't exactly been quiet on his way up, so he doubted the other would suspect anything too strongly. Sure enough, a few seconds later 𝗀𝐻𝐻𝐼 rushed into the room, Dark Shadow crying out and retreating due to the sudden light. Hideki took the opening, dropping down and landing with a thud harsher than he normally would have for, but it would do, in front of them, once again not his first choice, but he had a hero's image to maintain now. From there he seized upon the momentary blindness caused by the light to kick him back with one leg before stomping on his foot and clipping 𝗀𝐻𝐻𝐼's chin with his elbow. From there he gave a solid shove, while still standing on his foot, forcing him to fall onto his butt. He planted a foot firmly on the other's chest while they sat there, weighing down with enough force to wind them, while remaining careful not to go overboard. He stood at the ready, although forcing himself to breathe heavily as if that had taken a lot of effort from him, while the other was dazed. After 5 seconds his victory was announced. Hideki made sure he removed his foot the second the match was over, crouching down to his level and fretting slightly, "Are you okay? I didn't mean to use so much force at the end. Your quirk is really impressive though, I wasn't sure what to do." He knew from experience a little rambling always kept people from assuming masterminding informant, and put them off their guard. "Just focus on getting your breath back for now. I really am sorry about winding you." 𝗀𝐻𝐻𝐼 by now was good enough to speak and cut him off. "It is fine, Kobayashi, you were just doing your best. I'd be honored to fight you again. Same, I would enjoy training with you again too." Hideki grinned. But if you want, you can just call me Hideki. I mean, we did just finish trying to beat each other up after all. Very well, then you can call me 𝐶𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, Hideki. Hideki stood up, then offering his hand. Sure, it's nice to meet you then, 𝐶𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫. I don't think we got to talk before class. Hideki scratched the back of his head sheepishly. No, I don't think we did. It is nice to meet you too. Together the two walked companionably down the 6 or so flights to reach the first floor again. How deep was it anyway, in the basement? Hideki peered questioningly down as the stairway continued downward even after the first floor. I do not know. Dark shadow managed to stop me somewhere around the first floor, so I didn't fall too far. What really slowed me down was trying to find a way up without falling any further. Huh. Hideki carefully moved away from the wobbly railing. Well, I for one, am so not risking that fall again. 𝐶𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫 chuckles darkly, Hideki soon adding his laughter into the mix. The walk back to the home camp was short from there as the building rested several feet from where the rest of the class was, but they were both delayed some as recovery girl checked them both over to make sure they had no injuries. Once the old school nurse was satisfied that neither of them had more than a few scrapes and bruises, she released them to head on up so they could review what they did right and wrong in the exercise with the rest of the class and see the other fights. Hideki was not looking forward to the former part. He knew what he had done wrong so much that it was painful, and sure it had been purposeful, but godash. He hated messing up like that, but at the same time he was becoming friendly with a lot of the other students, so that was a plus. The worst-case scenario had yet to pass. Another good thing, and no one had noticed the lies about his quirk, appearance, or even identity. Except maybe Eraserhead, and that opened a whole new ball of crazy. But that he knew of a way to deal with. Hopefully, then again it could end up just making it a whole lot worse, and that could create worst-case scenario B, which was almost as bad as A, but not quite that bad. To compare the two, A was sort of like being on fire, but B you suffocate to death before you get burned too badly, so it wasn't quite as painful. Either way you were dead though, so, not good. And now he was rambling again. At least it wasn't muttering, but it still wasn't good per se. He needed to be aware while in enemy territory, which would be 24/7 for the next few months or until he figured out the spy. Finding the spy would take a while if they were any good, or if they weren't often active, or if they were an accidental informant, something that happened fairly often, as unlikely as it sounded even when alcohol wasn't involved. It so often was, he would know, so often he had pulled others into that trap. The spy could also be in a class other than 1A, which would also be trouble because, then what? Get to know the dirt on every single student, teacher, and faculty member. What he really needed was the information on the security systems. That would at least let him know if a spy in UA was a serious possibility or not. His distracted thoughts were quickly banished, however, when he opened the door and stepped foot into the observation room with 𝐶𝐮𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫.